All right. Are we?
I think they're here. Yeah. Is it up there?
Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody. We're going to play a video just around the microphone. Not that this is rocket science, but it is a little tricky at times. So we've got a video that we'll play just to make sure everybody knows what's happening.
Hi, Raleigh. Welcome to Council Chambers. At today's meeting, your elected leaders will have the opportunity to hear from you. Before the gavel, let's make sure everyone can hear you, here in the room and watching online and on TV. When you step up to the podium, adjust the microphone so you're speaking right over it. If you lean in too close or pull back too far or turn your head, we'll lose your voice. The mic is sensitive, no need to shout. Just speak clearly and we'll hear you. If the podium mic is out of reach, no problem. Our staff will bring you a handheld microphone. Want to speak at a future session? Head to raleighnc.gov and search public comment, or sign up to speak when your item comes before council as a public hearing. Thank you for sharing your time and ideas with us. We're glad you're here. The meeting starts soon.
The meeting starts now. Okay, first item, we have the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development Action Plan, and we have Ashley Tucker from Housing and Community Development.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of Council. Tonight, I will be sharing an overview of the annual action plan for the second public hearing. The annual action plan is required every year by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and is a one-year subset of the consolidated plan that contains all of the community development goals for the community. So today, we'll be talking about the funding priorities, accomplishments, and next steps for the annual action plan. The consolidated plan goals are what the action plan is grounded in, so increasing affordable housing options, preventing and reducing homelessness, and increasing housing stabilization and supportive services. So these are some of the accomplishments from the fiscal year 2021 through 2025 federal reporting period. This is a subset of what's available on our website on our affordable housing dashboard. So we have over 2,000 affordable rental units created, over 200 down payment loans provided, and over 5,300 individuals provided shelter. And these are the federal and local resources that our plan is grounded in. It's about $16.6 million total, and this is an annual allocation. So these are some of the goals for fiscal year 26 through 27. Under increasing affordable housing options, we have housing rehab, home buyer assistance, rental development, and site improvement. And that is a total of about $12.76 million. Preventing and reducing homelessness, homeless service grants, tenant-based rental assistance, and emergency shelter support at about $4.4 million. And then increasing housing stabilization and supportive services. And these are where our grants, Community Enhancement Grant and Human Service Agency grants, as well as home buyer counseling fall. So to conclude, I just want to briefly outline our timeline. We're currently in the comment period phase, which includes a combination of in-person and virtual meetings, as well as a 30-day comment period. The next step is to incorporate the feedback that we receive into the plan that'll come back to Council for adoption in May. That concludes my overview, and we just ask that Council open the public hearing.
Great, thank you. We will go ahead and open the public hearing, and we have two members of the public signed up. Octavia Rainey is the first, and we have 3 minutes per speaker.
Good afternoon. I'm going to start off, and I'm going to stick to my 3 minutes. First of all, the NRSA, the plan sucks. It really sucks. Larry did not follow any fair housing guidelines. Number two, the city don't enforce the Fair Housing Act. So I don't even think how you can move forward with any of your policies in housing without enforcing the act. It's terrible. Number three, this is a report from North Carolina State University on Newbern Avenue. I was the co-chair of the Newbern Avenue Alliance. So I know what went on and I know what happened to the city. So it was Edison Street and College Park. I went through my storage and bought this personally tonight because I wanted you to know that you didn't follow any of the guidelines in this either. Something is wrong with that picture. Third, I'm hot. Here is the document from 2007, and it was the Southeast Raleigh Assembly that we did with the City of Raleigh Planning Department. The NRSA was not a part of that plan. As a matter of fact, Eileen Brazil, Julian Prosser, Dempsey Benton said they would not do the NRSA. But what happened? You did it anyway. Fourth, you know, I call myself being famous, but when they did the policies, I was talked about, but that didn't bother me because that's what the council did. It was half Republican and half Democrat, and they really talked about me. But do you think I cared a hula fruit? I didn't care at all. But my point is, you did College Park an injustice. You really did. You let Cliff Zenner build a $500,000 house. You did that. You turned around and let them put infrastructure on the new homes. Then on the black homes, they didn't even put the wiring underground. That wasn't fair at all. What I am asking, because y'all got to make up for the fairness in this project, what I am asking, and I gave to Corey, I'm asking for a $500,000 project on Newbern Avenue in the property that you bought with the bond dollars to do for College Park and Idlewild a memorial garden. You got to make up for that. You got to make up. You can't continue to go around and treating black communities like they are stepchildren. Second, I want to see the consolidated plan on the citizen participation plan that talks about relocation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, next we have Kimberly Wright. Is Ms. Wright here? Okay, not seeing her. I will go ahead and close the hearing. Anything else, Ms. Tucker, or is that, okay. All right, next we have the limited obligation bond anticipation note series. Allison Bradshaw.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. Allison Bradshaw from the Finance Department. Tonight is the public hearing for the city to move forward on a draw program to support the Convention Center expansion and the Red Hat relocation. The request is to open a draw program to cover $32.5 million for the Red Hat relocation and to cover $125 million for Phase 1 of the Convention Center expansion. The funds to cover these costs is part of the Wake County hospitality taxes, which is the occupancy tax and prepared food and beverage tax levied here in Wake County, and is supported by the 23rd interlocal agreement between the City of Raleigh and Wake County. I do not believe anyone has signed up to speak tonight. It is staff's recommendation to adopt the resolutions in the agenda at the conclusion of the public hearing. And once adopted, this item will move forward to the LGC's May agenda. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have prior to opening the public hearing.
Okay, questions for Ms. Bratcher?
There's one real quick. Hi, Allison. It often comes up on social media threads and stuff. People see debt applied to these things and think, well, I would rather this be going to police or parks or whatever. And while we've talked about this extensively, we have a full house. Can you just avail us? Could these funds have otherwise been used for other purposes?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Patton, for that question. And the simple answer is no. These are governed by statute and a series of interlocal agreements. Again, we're on the 23rd one that specifically addresses where these funds can be used. And they really are for convention, and amenities here in Wake County. And the city is lucky to be a recipient of that.
Okay, seeing no other questions, I will open the hearing, close the hearing, and is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
All right, all in favor of the motion, aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have the petition annexation AX 4825, 1415, and 1507 Trailwood Drive. Bynum Walter from Planning and Development.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. My name is Bynum Walter. I work in Planning and Development. I'd like to offer you a combined presentation for annexation AX 48 and rezoning Z 45 as they are addressing the same parcels. You will need to hold two separate public hearings, and you will need to act separately on the two items. So the petition annexation request is for 1415 and 1507 Trailwood Drive, as well as 0 Crump Road. The property here is currently zoned residential 2. There's a neighborhood conservation overlay district, as well as a special residential parking overlay district here. A portion of the property is also residential 4 with that same parking overlay. The proposed use here is multifamily living, multi-unit living. To the east of this site is Centennial Campus, and then single-unit living on other sides of the property. So this is an unincorporated area, fully within Raleigh's corporate limits. So you can see the site here. You can see the corporate limits in gray, and the smaller area, the lighter color, sort of in the center of this photograph, that has not been annexed into the city at this time. Reminder of our area of annexation eligibility. You can see the star on the bottom left here, clearly within the area of eligibility. There are utilities roughly proximate to the site. Some topography on the site, no floodplain present. The fire service report is included in your agenda materials. There is a service issue here. So moving then to the rezoning request, those same parcels, so this is just under 8 acres. The request is to go to residential 10 with conditions. The Planning Commission recommends approval. This is inconsistent with the future land use map. So here we are, aerial view of the site. We're on the the east side of Trailwood, the west side of Centennial Campus. Some views of the site from the street. There's some conditions provided here. So they have said that the minimum lot size will be at least 20,000 square feet. It's about half an acre. The minimum lot frontage here would be 100 feet per lot. And then they're saying that the units would be affordable for residents at 60% of Raleigh's area median income. They are limiting themselves to no more than 156 dwelling units, requiring a 60-foot setback from Trailwood Drive, and then a 10-foot setback from side lot lines, and 20-foot from side lot lines within 100 feet of Trailwood Drive. So a look at how the zoning is changing here. The front setback is steady. The rear is reducing slightly, and the entitlement generally is increasing. This is consistent with the comprehensive plan, but inconsistent with the future land use map, which calls for low-scale residential here. Number of consistent policies here around compact development, housing variety. Generally, all of the policies around increasing housing in the city are consistent here, as well as some of those around sustainable development. The inconsistency here is around the future land use map, as well as I mentioned the fire service report previously. So the zoning and infrastructure impacts policy shows up as inconsistent, as well as those response times to answer standards. Again, Planning Commission recommends approval. What questions could I'm sorry, one more point to make. Since this is inconsistent with the future land use map, an action on your part to rezone would result in a future land use map amendment to that moderate scale residential category. What questions could I answer for you before you open each of the public hearings?
Questions? Counselor Silver?
Bonnie, we noted in the staff report that there are 2 NCODs outside of the cities. I'm sorry, just want to make sure I have this correct. One of 2 outside of city corporate limits, but within the ETJ. Can you I'm just trying to get an understanding of how that happens. I know it was before your time, before my time. That is somewhat unique. I don't know where the other is, unless you know where it is.
I think it's Foxcroft.
Okay. Can you just talk about, because this is one that is not within the city's corporate limits. So can you just explain when that was and how that evolved? Because that seems like one of the earlier NCODs.
It is one of the earlier ones. I will say, you'll remember in our corporate limits, we have zoning authority, and we also provide service and collect tax. In our extraterritorial jurisdiction, we have zoning authority. We don't collect tax or provide service. So this is one of those places where we have zoning authority. Residents in this area appealed to council, right, petition to develop this NCOD. I want to say it dates back to the late 80s, early 90s.
That's what I thought.
Which is very early days for
The NCOD.
NCODs in Raleigh. That is true. He says 99.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions before we start the hearing? Okay, so this is I have 2 different hearings. So this is for the annexation, and for this one, I have 3 people signed up in support and 1 in opposition. So support is Molly Stewart, Ryan Fisher, and Landon Cox. And then in opposition, Paul Moore. We will then open a second hearing, which is for the rezoning, and I have additional people there. But I will, it's 8 minutes per side. Is Molly Stewart? Yeah.
Shall I give my combined presentation
Sure.
at this point? Okay, great. And we do have 2 other speakers in support who will be speaking on the rezoning at that portion. Great. Thank you. Molly Stewart, Morningstar Law Group, here on behalf of the applicant, LDG Development. LDG is very pleased to be here tonight to propose to you up to 156 units of badly needed housing, all of which is affordable and at a wide range of affordability levels, including 39 deeply affordable units at no more than 30% of AMI, thanks to LDG's partnership with the Raleigh Housing Authority, who you'll hear from a bit later tonight. The applicant has been able to accommodate this request not within a mixed-use district, which are fairly common in the area, but within a simple R10 residential district, which is found throughout the area today, as you can see highlighted on your screen. They've also been able to largely retain the NCOD requirements. They have included 4 of the 5 Trailwood NCOD requirements directly into their zoning conditions. And those zoning conditions will restrict the entire site and not only the portion of the site that is controlled by the NCOD today. So in that sense, actually expanding the reach of those 4 NCOD requirements. That 5th NCOD requirement caps building height at 2.5 stories. Although we're unable to accommodate that one within this affordable proposal, I just want to remind everyone that the R10 request does limit height to 3 stories in this area. Making those conditions binding on this site brings that 60-foot front setback onto the site, providing the opportunity to maintain tree conservation area along the Trailwood Drive frontage, with the goal of making it difficult or impossible to see the proposed buildings from the site. Now, we have heard concerns from our neighbors that Trailwood Drive lacks the visibility necessary to add traffic at this location. This is a bend in the road, and that we can see the Trailwood does have that rural character today. But Trailwood Drive is not a cul-de-sac. It's a connector between Tryon Road and Avent Ferry Road. It's located inside the Beltline, adjacent to Centennial Campus, and minutes from downtown. It happens to run through a large lot Wake County enclave outside of the city's boundaries. Even if we prevented all development forever within this area, traffic will increase as the city grows around it. As we've heard, that rural roadway street type is already not serving this traffic level today. However, if this site is brought into the city, the developer will be required to dedicate additional right-of-way on their side of the street to meet site distance requirements that don't apply today, and to improve their side of the outside of this bend in Trailwood Drive to an urban street type, improving the safety and visibility exactly at the point that we've heard is a problem today, due to that existing mismatch between the rural street type and its location and function here within central Raleigh. This proposal can fix that problem at this location. I'm going to skip a few slides for time and simply summarize that this area has remained largely unchanged in form over its past 75 years, almost 75 years of existence, while the city grew around it and the area benefited from that growth. And despite that lag, again, this request before you was not to bring in massive height or density, but a simple 3-story R10 residential district, which exists all around the area today. The site is 350 feet from the nearest R10 apartment complex, which has defined the character behind many of these NCOD-controlled lots since the early 1980s. I will skip these as you saw them in our staff presentation. And just note that the site is also located in a location encouraged by the city's affordable housing location policy. We know there is no perfect site for affordable housing. They are very hard to find. I'll be surprised if we ever see one that meets with every city policy on the books, but this one comes very close. One can certainly identify some differences between the NCOD regulations that apply today and the requirements proposed under this request, as well as some small differences between that low scale and moderate scale residential future land use map designation. We bring you here a proposal tonight that in exchange for the smallest possible deviations on those two scores, also proposes to make major improvements to eliminate existing visibility issues at a critical point on this street, which will otherwise only continue to get worse as traffic increases, as well as to provide a very broad mix of affordability levels within a convenient and central location within the city, largely out of sight of the roadway, and where it's supported by our affordable housing location policy. For all of these reasons, we believe this request is reasonable and in the public interest, and we request your support. We have a full team available tonight to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the other two individuals will speak at the next one. So I guess we can reset the clock, and then Paul Moore. Is Mr. Moore here? Yeah. Please come on down. Yeah. Yeah. And we'll put 8 minutes on the clock.
Thank you. My name is Paul Moore. I live at and own 1600 Crump Road, which is this notch here. Have you been interested in hearing from me at all? I hope you have. I wanted to speak against the annexation because it's going to leave me as a 3/4 acre county enclave surrounded on all sides by the city. The plan, as I understand it, is to run a water pipe down Trailwood, and that'll bring it to within 200 feet of my property. And my fear is that they're going to say, you're on your own, buddy, if you want to get into the city, build your own pipe down the road I live on, Crump Road, which is here. But as this application states elsewhere, that Crump Road isn't really a road. It is, it isn't a public road, it's a private road. Yeah, here it is. I'm sorry, I'm getting nervous here. Private drive, I don't know if you can see it right about here. Well, I just crossed it out. Anyway. I'm afraid that they're going to ask me to, or a developer that I may sell to build a redundant pipe across this disputed land or down this road, and that leaves me in a very bad position. I think they're going to say that my dragging my feet on this is part of why I'm in this position. I was excluded from this from the very beginning. I've got a letter here dated September 18th where all of the players are in position here. This is the same diagram. It is an application for the zoning request naming the other 3 parcels. And I was supposedly sent a letter on September 12th, scarcely 7 days prior. However, this document was actually a PDF created on October 15th by a person by the name of Carmen Kwan, K-U-A-N. She is a real person that apparently worked for the city of Raleigh for some time, but has apparently taken a hike to Morningstar. So September 15th was a Monday, and they apparently sent me this notice on the previous Friday, and I'm supposed to get that through the mail and jump into position. No, this is fairly clear evidence that I was excluded from this from the beginning. There is a practical reason why they've excluded me. In every case that they've built a project like this, it's been 156 units all over. This is their number. And they've gotten it on this property without my land. They don't need it. I've spoken with the developer, and even if they bought the land, to solve the problem of me being an enclave and this water pipe problem that I'll get into, they still wouldn't build on it. The water pipe problem is that so long as it stays on their single property, it is a private entity, and they've got a sump pump of a certain size. If it crosses the property line onto mine, it becomes a public entity. And the sump pump has to grow bigger to the tune of about $250,000. I don't think this is a problem that I put into action here, for one thing. But had they acquired my property, they wouldn't be creating this county enclave, and they would have it all on one property, and it wouldn't have this pipe problem. And I was excluded from it. I've got it right here. That's all I have. Thank you for listening, and I'm here for any questions you may have. I've got
All right, thank you. We'll go ahead and close the hearing. Anybody want questions before I close it? Okay. So we'll close this section, and everybody just stand by. We'll go ahead and open rezoning Z4525, which is a different set of speakers. So opening the rezoning, and Molly Stewart's already spoken, so I have Ryan Fisher, Landon Cox, Ryan Stevenson, and Jen Truman. Oh, and? You are not on this list, so I'm not quite sure. We could ask you questions later, but I do not have you signed up. We appreciate head of the Raleigh Housing Authority there, and so we may have questions for you, but.
My apologies. We did believe he was signed up, so there was some error here.
Okay. How about Ryan Fisher, Landon Cox, Ryan Stevenson, Jen Truman?
Hello, everyone. I'm here to speak in support for Z45. Many of you know I actually live just a few neighborhoods over, and I regularly bike and drive along Trailwood to get to my favorite city pool and many of the other things that I do on Avon Ferry Road and Tryon Road, where I used to live on Avon Ferry for many years as well. So I'm here to say, as someone who's really familiar with the area, that this is the right place for more housing. I'm also here on behalf of the local YIMBY chapter to say that many of us believe this is the right place for more housing. It's a small pocket of county, but it's surrounded by city services in a growing city within walking distance of frequent transit and right next to NC State. Importantly, also for many of us YIMBYs, this proposal includes conditions specifically for affordable housing at the 60%, and with the partnership with RHA, even lower. So at this table, I think you often hear support for affordable housing in theory, but in practice, many people say, just not here. And you may hear concerns about scale or fit in this or any specific neighborhood, but those concerns really come up in every neighborhood. So I'm here to remind you that this is the moment where the pattern comes to you for a decision. Either we allow homes in a place that can clearly support them, or we continue to say not here everywhere. If this is the right place for housing, then it's the right place for affordable housing. This is exactly the kind of proposal that should have your support, and it provides homes that are deeply needed in our community. So I'm asking you to take this moment to say yes to more housing and to welcome new neighbors into this neighborhood.
Thank you. As Ryan, Landon, Rynell, anybody else on the list? Okay. All right, so we will then ask the opposition. We have John Bagan, Sarah Dietrich, and James Summerall. Yep, and y'all have 8 minutes combined, so however you want to. No, you can choose your order. Yeah, so you have 8 minutes between the three of you, yes.
Thank you. My name is Jimmy Summerall. I live at 1515 Trailwood Drive. I have lived there for almost 50 years. I am a retired drafting teacher from Menlo High School. Before teaching, I worked at the NC Department of Transportation in roadway design. I helped design and draw the plans for I-95 bypass of Federal. I also helped with the upgrades and everything to Avon Ferry Road. I am concerned that a traffic study has not been conducted to determine if this location can safely handle the traffic turning into and out of this proposed apartment complex. How many more sets of apartments are you going to approve without adding enough infrastructure to support this growth? Between 5,000 and 10,000 students live beyond our Trailwood community and use Trailwood Drive to go back and forth to school. These students or their parents expect you to provide safe roads to travel on. The only access to them to the university is Trailwood and Gorman Street, which only have one turn lane on each one on the Avon Ferry. Trailwood has not been updated to handle the traffic safely that use it. Trailwood is one of the more dangerous roads around. Trailwood Drive, as you know it today, is a combination of Trailwood and Crump Road joined to make Trailwood Drive. The NCDOT wanted to cut through road from Tryon Road to Avon Ferry. Trailwood Drive was chosen. Trailwood was just a community road only and was not designed or built as a cut-through road. These students on our road tailgate and pass on double yellow lines with oncoming traffic. Trailwood is still that farm road that originally developers built and kept up. Paving that road does not change the design of the road and make it a safe road. These students are the future of our nation. Their safety is your responsibility. Higher density development without safety and infrastructure is not responsible growth. Do you want your kids and grandkids running up and down the road at 50 and 60 miles per hour? Because they will. I've been there 50 years. I see it all the time. I'm concerned about the safety of more people having to turn off and onto Trailwood Drive from this location. The road in this location was not designed for this amount of traffic. I ask that the City Council take this info in consideration. I fear that there will be more accidents if these factors are not considered. Traffic engineers standing across the street from 1507 Trailwood admiring their ability to mark off the curve where they can't put a driveway and doing a traffic count beside the entrance to Centennial Campus and a half a mile north of the project, a traffic study. Nothing was done at the project at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have material for the City Council.
Okay. If you just put it in that basket, they can distribute it. Thank you.
Can I start?
Please.
Good evening. My name is John Bagan. I reside at 3204 Tanager Street in the Trailwood NCOD. I would like to provide safety facts showing Trailwood Drive is unsafe at current baseline traffic. An NCDOT crash analysis reports 124 crashes in the last 5 years, including 1 fatal crash, 27 injury crashes with 40 injuries. So when normalized for comparison, the total crash rate approaches 476 crashes on Trailwood, much above the statewide rate of 260 crashes. Trailwood fatal crash rate is 3.84 crashes, more than twice the state fatal rate of 1.77 crashes. Trailwood is also dangerous for pedestrians and bikers. There are no sidewalks and no bike paths available. 8 cyclists and pedestrians were struck in those wrecks. In the last 7 weeks, 2 crashes with injuries took place, and they're not reported in this analysis. LDG refused to share its traffic analysis. The Planning Commission traffic impact estimate is wrong. 156 apartments of Z45 would only add 38 cars on the road in peak morning time. So we request a safety analysis by the NCDOT of the cumulative impact of adding hundreds of vehicles on Trailwood Drive through Z29, Z45, and Z38, and required remediations. So remember, 1 crash every 15 days at the baseline traffic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mayor and council members. I'm Sarah Dietrich. My family and I live at 1414 Trailwood Drive. I want to talk from the heart. Trailwood Drive is a product of a hilly land with blind spots and driveways that are hard to pull out of. There's a double curve with both vertical and horizontal components, leading to our road safety concerns. We want to protect the old hardwood forest, which provides the oxygen to breathe, water vapor so critical for air quality, shelter for wildlife. We have a pair of mating bald eagles, and most importantly, to reduce runoff, which is so important to the health of the watershed. All 3 zoning requests impact the watershed with massive removal of trees and replacement with parking lots and buildings. Each family in the Trailwood community deals with lot topography that limits the location of the home, the driveway, the well, the septic tank, drain field. We each depend on private well for drinking water, and all of us are at risk when the over 8 acres is clear cut for the proposed Z45 project, leaving a maximum of a 20-foot buffer at the property lines, and today we learned it's 10 around and 60 at the front. One property will feel immediate impacts and no privacy with 3-story buildings. Z45 will literally make an enclave of the property. You've heard from Paul Moore at 1600 Crump. And the issue is access to water and sewer. 2007, almost 20 years, the Dietrich family has lived in the R2 property directly across from Z45. Our neighborhood was defined with R2 zoning, UDO, NCOD, and overlays, as well as the future comprehensive plans. Today, we still trust that the Raleigh City Council will
represent our interests and promises that were made when we purchased our lot. We are deeply concerned about the road safety, the cumulative environmental and community impacts from these proposals. I respectfully urge the Raleigh City Council to uphold the city's own planning guidelines and protect established residential neighborhoods. Thank you for the opportunity to comment and your time to reflect on our ask of you to deny the Z45 zoning.
Thank you. All right, so I'll go ahead and close the Z45, and now questions. Start with Councilor Branch.
So I have a question for Mr. Moore. You mentioned your water connection. Do you want to be connected to Raleigh Water and Sewer? Can you come down?
Yes, sir. If the project, if the proposal moves forward, my intention is to do likewise to what these other landowners are doing. I would like to come back and ask for R10 and annexation of my property. This isn't anything they're not doing. They don't live in the area. They've hired a Harvard-trained attorney to attack me over there. And so the question was about the water pipe. Yes, I've offered to sell my house.
About the water.
I've offered to sell my house.
Okay.
So I'm not standing in the way, and I haven't asked for $3 million for it either. I'm not gouging them on the price. The issue is that they're going to build it in such a way that it will block my access to it. And they also, it's a private thing so long as it stays on their property. If it crosses my property line, it's a public thing, and it's complicated. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
You gave me the information that you have, so that's fine. That's helpful. So that's definitely helpful. So thank you.
Thank you.
My other questions is for our city staff, transportation department. Can you speak to when site or road improvements would be reviewed and what type of thing? We saw the presentation from the applicant, but can you speak from the city standpoint what would be required?
Yes, so good evening, everyone. Carter Robertson with Transportation. Ultimately, the determination of roadway improvements and access to the site, both of those would be determined at site plan after official site plans submitted for us and for NCDOT to react to. It is an NCDOT roadway, so any driveway permit would be subject to their approval. And likely in this scenario, given that it's right at the sharpest point of this curve, some evidence about visibility and sight distance would be a condition of that approval. In terms of the road improvements, if a site plan rises to the level of Tier 3 or subdivision, that's when the full cross-section improvements that Molly put up on the screen would be required. So right-of-way dedication for the ultimate divided section, curb and gutter, sidewalk, bicycle facilities, all of that.
So basically, there are built-in triggers for improvements, basically of the road that is in front of their property only, though, correct?
Their half from the center line
Back
on
to
their
their
frontage.
Okay. And as far as the rest of Trailwoods, that is really, I guess, unfortunately, kind of at the mercy of the NCDOT?
That's right.
Okay.
Any other? Councilor Silver and then Patton?
Oh, I think.
Sure. Okay, and
Minor
then we also have
transportation too.
Councilor Ford.
Okay, so just building on Councilmember Branch's point, so if they submit a Tier 3 site plan and they're on the hook for the road improvements, can you just put a really fine point on it? Who pays for those road improvements?
That would be their responsibility.
The applicant pays for it, right? Thank you. And then can you speak to the any crash cluster that is noted there?
Yes,
What's
so-
happening at that intersection?
So with all these rezoning requests on the corridor, we did pull crash data for Trailwood from Avent Ferry all the way down to Tryon. We did find that in general, the rate of crashes is higher than the average, what you'd expect for a 2-lane roadway. Most of those crashes are occurring at the intersections, the exception being this curve in the road. And so we pulled data for the past 5 years. There were 10 crashes at this curve in the road. Most of those were run off the road crashes where traffic was traveling northbound. Most of them were going over the speed limit and they ran off the road to the right. Fortunately, there were no serious injuries involved with any of those. So with the improvements, hopefully, the vertical separation that would come from curb and gutter, sidewalk, and all of that would bring some more visibility. I'm not totally prepared to say that would totally solve the problem of visibility, though.
So you think it's possible it would improve, but you're not staking your
It
career
seems
on it?
most of the crashes are related to higher speeds coming up on that curb. So having better visibility would help. But of course, at site plan, as it came in, our development review team would be working with our Vision Zero team, Bike and Ped team, all these other people in our transportation department to make sure that safety is addressed in some way.
Thank you. My next question is for the applicant, but do you have any more for staff?
No.
How about
I don't have a question, I got a statement, so I'll wait till all this.
Okay, okay. Okay, go ahead.
For staff? Okay. I have a question for Ms. Stewart. I read through this thoroughly, and it's consistent, comprehensive plan, inconsistent future land use map. You're meeting 4 of the 5 NCOD. We have to make a finding that this is reasonable in the public interest. Can you talk about that inconsistency and anything that, through your conditions, you're mitigating to show us that this is actually in the public interest and reasonable?
Sure, thank you. There are several ways that we've addressed that inconsistency. So first, I'd like to point out that it is the smallest inconsistency possible with the future land use map going to the very next category up to that moderate scale residential. So the difference is quite minor. The low scale residential supports up to an R6 zoning. We're requesting the very next district above that. So it is truly as small as it can be. And in order to help offset that, we definitely feel that that beefing up those setbacks that the NCOD requires, putting those in place, capping the units at 156, as well as simply making sure that this is truly affordable housing, all come together to offset that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions down here? If not, I'll go back to Lambert Melton. Do you want to start?
Yeah, it's for someone on the applicant team. I just want to hear more about the relationship with the housing authority. Sounds like there's 39 deeply affordable units. I'm curious about the unit split, if that's known, on the bedroom split, and just kind of hearing more about that partnership.
That was my question as well.
Okay.
I'll introduce Landon Cox from LDG Development.
Hi, good evening. So we're working to, still in the early stages of speaking with the Housing Authority, but both sides are moving toward a partnership at the project. The Housing Authority would be providing 39 project-based vouchers to the community, which are very helpful from an underwriting perspective. You're right to say that there are some there's deep low-income targeting here. So 8 of the 156 units, 8 of those would be for families earning 20% AMI and below. 31 units would be set aside for folks earning 30% AMI and below. So altogether, 25% of the units will be reserved for folks making at or below 30% AMI. And then yet your question was about the bedroom split?
Yeah, for those deeply affordable units, do you know how many will be 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom?
Sure. So we've spread them proportionally across the AMI levels. And I should say there will be folks earning 20, 30, 60, and 70% AMI that would live with the community. It would average to 60 or below. Three one-bed for the folks earning 20% AMI, 3 1-bedrooms, 3 2-bedrooms, and 2 3-bedrooms. For the folks earning 30% AMI and below, that would be 9 1-bedrooms, 12 2-bedrooms, and 10 3-bedrooms. So the same proportions are observed for all the AMIs.
Thank you.
I mean, if it's appropriate, we have the CEO of Raleigh Housing Authority here. I'd like for him to answer how you plan to partner with the development.
So good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Ashley Lomas Johnson. I'm the CEO of the Housing Authority. We are in the process of forming partnerships across the city with developers like LDG to ensure that our clients can live in places across the city and not in areas of concentrated poverty. And this is a huge opportunity for the Housing Authority and the folks that we serve. So we will be providing the project-based vouchers that will provide very deep affordability. So while there are 20%, 30% units, and 50% units, one of our clients may move into a 50% unit, but they will be able to pay, based on their own income, even if it's 10% of area median income. So this is a much needed resource. So those area median income levels, they are part of the tax credit program, but when you have a voucher, you pay whatever is 30% of your adjusted income on rent.
I have a question for Ashley while you're here. So just curious, with those vouchers, can they be provided with any apartment complex? Like, what is the criteria? Is it existing developments or only new developments? Because there's only a certain number of vouchers, correct?
Yeah, so all of the above. It can be for new and existing properties. So these, the Housing Authority is authorized to serve or use just over 4,000 vouchers. Unfortunately, over time, the funding for those vouchers can't actually support all 4,000, but we are close to the 4,000 mark. We can project-based tie the vouchers to units. We can project-base up to 30% of the vouchers that we have, so 1,200. However, these vouchers that we are talking about here are vouchers that we will receive as we convert our public housing under a demonstration program where we will, the subsidy will be replaced with vouchers. So these would be an additional, up to 1,100 additional vouchers that can be project-based, meaning that we can attach the subsidy to the property rather than the tenant. In addition to that, one of the important pieces of this demonstration program is that these are long-term, basically for the life of the property that gets developed, that we can, so we have to make those commitments, and our partner has to make the commitment that these project-based subsidies will never go away unless,
when you say never, is there a term on that?
It'll be a initial 20-year term, and then a required second 20-year term, and then beyond that also. So the affordability is perpetual.
But every 20 years renewal.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
thank
it's
you.
Perpetual.
Okay. Any other questions? Counselor Ford, do you want to make your statement?
This is not a question, so you don't have to stand there. You probably don't want to hear what I got to say, so you probably don't want to stand there. I will say, since I've been on council, there have been a number of projects that have been proposed on Trailwood. Most of them have been market rate, and they have been turned down or denied by the council for a variety of reasons. The traffic issue was one, but the larger issue for me has always been environmental issues, particularly as it relates to stormwater. I can't tell you how many times I've driven by the Method daycare that's at the intersection of Trailwood and Avon Ferry and seen it underwater because there's so much stormwater in the area. And so often what happens when folks can't get market rate stuff approved, they come and dangle the affordable housing carrot in front of us and say, well, we're going to put affordable housing here, so that should give you the impetus to approve the project. I have historically not supported projects on Trailwood just based on the environmental impacts and the other issues. And so I just want to put that out there that previous councils have denied a variety of market rate development based on challenges with this particular area. So I'm not necessarily swayed, though I know how important affordable housing is to the city of Raleigh, but I also recognize what the challenges are on Trailwood, and those challenges to me have not changed in the last 6 or 7 years since I've been on council.
Yeah, I've just got a few comments as well. I believe we're being asked to vote on this today because of the timing around this proposal for affordable housing. And I will say I wish we had at least one more meeting to ensure some of the promises that have been made here. If I could see those in conditions, I would like that. I know some concerns could be addressed, others probably can't. Some of the concerns I do have is the low-scale residential, this being inconsistent with the future land use map. Also, the gap financing is not secured yet, so the affordable housing that is being requested is going to request funds from the city. We won't know whether those have been secured, I think, until later in the month, or I'm not sure when. As far as the partnership with RHA, I think that is wonderful. I would love to see that. I'd also like to see a condition around it. Currently, the conditions read as 60% AMI, so we don't have that deeply affordable part here. Also, there are no sidewalks that connect this site to the bus areas on Avon Ferry or down the road off of Trailwood. So even with sidewalks, with a bike lane built because of this development, we don't get the connectivity. And this road, I find it dangerous from a pedestrian and bicyclist standpoint. It's a road I wouldn't recommend someone on. I do cross it frequently on the Greenway, and it's where people are coming pretty fast. They come down the hill, they come around the bend, and I am careful. I watch out because I do not expect them to stop, and unfortunately they go quite fast. So I do appreciate the improvements that could be made at that corner. I just know there's more that would have to be done, I think, for it to be truly safe. One other condition I would love to see is that I appreciate all the NCOD mimicry. I think that's great. But having the trees in front would be something that could be added. Right now, the frontage, that setback, you could have a parking lot there. It does have a picture, I know, in the design we saw to keep the tree conservation area in the front on Trailwood. That would be great, but it's not conditioned. So this area, as Councilmember Fort noted, is environmentally sensitive. It is a wildlife corridor. It does drain into the Walnut Creek. So just a couple improvements I'd love to see. At this time, I'm not going to support the case.
Any other comments? I'll make one, which is I did go out to the site, and this area is an anomaly, right? It is a old rural, right? Has been in a county and is basically a rural road right in the middle of an incredible dense urban area with a major university just steps away from it. And to me, I know we've talked about environment. None of this is on a floodplain. All of this is, I think, an incredible site to get to distributed housing in an area that does not have concentrated housing. And as the number one goal of this council is affordable housing, to me, given the location, the access, I will be supporting this.
I'll add a comment too. I will agree. For me, this being a 100% affordable project does tilt the scale. There was a comment earlier about students. Students are need a place to live. A 60% AMI is typically folks that are coming out of college, young professionals. They need housing. This is being conditioned to 150-something units, so less than I think they could have gotten by right for a full R10 rezoning. We've heard the commitment and the planned specific units, particularly 3 bedrooms for folks at deeply, deeply affordable. I mean, those are families that are probably living in shelters or on the street. I don't think this project's gonna make the traffic much worse on Drellwood. I don't think it's gonna make it much better. But we're gonna be able to house a lot more people here. The students, the folks who are unsheltered, the folks that are probably living in temporary shelter spaces, and I just can't, I cannot vote it down, so I'll be voting yes.
Okay, yes.
5%.
I rarely come to a hearing with an undecided in my notes. And I wanted to hear the testimony, and I have to say, this is one case where I'm struggling. A lot to the benefit of this case. I agree providing affordable housing at a variety of levels. The fact that it's going to be set back, not conditioned, but set back with a buffer of trees where it cannot be seen. 4 of the 5 NCOD criterion is moving forward. In terms of my concern, I agree with Mayor Pro Tem that if we're going to have a frequent transit area, I would like the connectivity to that transit area. So this is putting pressure over time, and the applicant will build out their section. So I am still trying to decide how I'm going to vote on this one because there are aspects of it that I see extremely positive. There are other ones, and as Mayor Pro Tem said, we need a decision today. So I am still processing what my vote is going to be. To me, that there are both pros and cons to this. I do believe, as the applicant's representative said, there is a small difference between the R6 and the R10, and the conditions and other benefits bring it closer. So I will see how the votes go, and I'll let you know in about a few minutes how I'm going to decide.
I think it's going to be a few seconds. I'm about to call to question.
Yeah.
Did you close the hearing already?
Everything's been closed. Any other comments or statements? Okay.
So you do the annexation first. For the annexation, I move to approve the annexation with the effective date of April 7th, 2026.
Second. All in favor of the annexation?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Nay? Okay, so two noes. And then rezoning?
Yes. I move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated April 7th, 2026, contained in the agenda materials, and to approve the zoning amendment with the adoption and effective dates described in the agenda item under recommended action. This approval is also deemed an amendment to the future land use map to the extent described in the adopted consistency statement.
Second. All in favor of that motion? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. Okay, so that's a 5-3 vote, and that passes. Thanks to everybody who came down for that. All right, next we've got text change. I'm just making sure I'm on the right. Yes, text change TCZ 1425. This is on South New Hope Road. Matthew Clem, thank you.
Yep. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Matthew Clem, Planning and Development. So this is a request to rezone about 60 acres. It's a text change to rezoning, text change to zoning conditions, so the base districts and heights aren't changing. As you can see on the screen, the Planning Commission recommends approval 8-1. The request is consistent with the future land use map and the comprehensive plan. Overall, this is a request to reduce commercial entitlement and increase residential entitlement, and I'll talk about specifically what that looks like. So this is the site. You can see it is undeveloped. It comprises 3 tracts. It's in the Old Town subdivision. You can see to the north, east, and south, newly developed townhouses, detached homes, and apartment homes as well. That's at the intersection of Rock Quarry Road and South New Hope Road. A couple of views on the site. This is from New Hope. This is internal on Anamosa. You can see in the distance the tract under rezoning. You can see it's undeveloped and it has some fill dirt placed there from the new construction you see on the left side of the screen. Another view at a stub street here with some townhomes and just more views of the recent construction. So there are several rezoning conditions. The first prohibits a number of uses. The second limits residential development to the attached house, townhouse, and apartment building type, so no mixed-use building type. Non-residential uses are limited to 285,000 square feet. The existing zoning limits it to 360,000 square feet, so it goes down from 360 to 285. Condition number 4 puts in place some phasing. What this says is once 75,000 square feet of non-residential use is developed, no additional non-residential square footage can be delivered until a site plan or a plan with a grocery store is submitted and approved to the city. So they could build up to 75,000 square feet of commercial, no more commercial until there's a plan for a grocery store. Additional limits on commercial use here, 2231 South New Hope Road, which is this site, is limited to 9 buildings containing no more than 75,000 square feet, containing exclusively restaurant uses. Building height is limited to 4 stories within 150 feet of the streets listed here, Anamosa, Addisine, and Arcosa Drive. All required shade trees planted are required to have a caliper of 3.5 inches. Buildings containing bars, nightclubs, and taverns are required to be at least 250 feet away from properties on the adjacent streets. Condition number 9 is another condition that puts into place some phasing. So it says no more than 450 residential units can be built until a plan containing a grocery store is submitted and approved, at which point 625 can be built. So the existing zoning limits development to 450,000 square feet. What this condition is saying is they can build up to 450,000, which they can do today. No additional units can be built until there's a grocery store plan submitted and approved, at which point a total of 625, so an additional 175 residential units. Condition number 10 provides for 12.5% of the site to be set aside as open area. The condition is long and details what exactly that means. The intent here is clearly to have additional open area that would otherwise be required compared to the amenity space and tree conservation area requirements of our Unified Development Ordinance. The applicant may have additional information about how exactly they plan to facilitate that, and I can walk you through the challenges of saying exactly what that means at this stage in development because of how and when amenity area and tree conservation area are calculated. And the final condition is states that the type 1 protective yard shall not be used to satisfy any neighborhood transition requirements. And just so you know, when protective yards are required, you have 3 options. They've said they won't use the smallest one. So one of these other 2 are on the table for them. Just a look at the change of entitlement, again, 58.65 acres. Existing residential entitlement is 450. The request goes up to 625 when those timed qualifiers in the zoning condition are met. And the reduction of commercial entitlement goes down from 360,000 to 285,000. Consistent with the future land use map, the comprehensive plan, inconsistent with the urban form map, consistent policies here about more compact development, increasing housing in the area, zoning for housing, and managing commercial development impacts by providing the spacing requirements from the bar tavern use, and also the prohibition of the smallest protective yard allowed by our code. Zoning and infrastructure impacts response time standards are not met in the area, and it is inconsistent with the frontage condition. The Planning Commission recommends approval, and this is their statement. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions, Councilor Silver?
Yeah, can you just go over the inconsistency with the urban form map and
Yep.
just, yeah.
So, Rock Quarry Road is identified on the urban form map as a transit emphasis corridor. And when properties are touching or adjacent to streets with that designation, our comprehensive plan recommends an urban frontage. What that would do would require any new building to be built like snugged up in this corner. The applicants can speak to why they chose not to include that. I believe it is likely due to the shape and geometry of the parcel in that location, but there's no frontage requested in the rezoning request.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Clem? Yeah, Councilor Patton.
So just in summation, 75,000 of non-residential uses, and then they have to stop and put in a grocery store. And/or for 450 residential units, then they have to stop and put in the grocery store before they can keep going to the 625.
Yep.
Is that right? Okay.
Okay. Any?
I'm going to let everyone speak.
All right. Okay, so I will go ahead and open the public hearing for TCZ 1425, and we have one person signed up in support, Amy Kraut. 8 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Amy Kraut. I'm an attorney at Smith Anderson. I'm here on behalf of the applicant with members of our development team in support of this text change to zoning conditions request. Staff did a great job outlining what those changes are. I'm really here to kind of give you the why behind them. So these parcels are a part of the larger Old Town project. This site was actually rezoned with those conditions in 2019 and currently allows up to 450 residential units and 360 square foot of commercial. So we're not starting with a completely blank slate here. The purpose of this request is really just to tweak those conditions to help facilitate development of a site that sat vacant for 20 years as everything else has grown up around it. All that to say, our revised conditions are an attempt to balance the history of the site, the need for flexibility to encourage future development, and also a desire to meet the neighbors' kind of concerns and feedback. The main purpose of our changes is really to increase residential density to facilitate development of grocery store. The biggest conversation for the development of this site has really been trying to get a higher end grocery store on the property since there's limited variety of grocers in the area. While there's been some interest in the site, there hasn't been a commitment. And since 2019, based on our conversations with grocers, one of the biggest issues and one of the things that they look at is high density areas and increased residential density immediately nearby the proposed site. So to help provide what grocers are looking for, we revised a couple of the conditions adopted in 2019. Condition number 2, we revised to allow more flexibility in the type of development. So it allows a mix of residential building types and removes the 2-bedroom unit cap. That's a really big deal because in today's market, most, if not all, residential developers need the ability to develop 3 or 4-bedroom units. And then condition number 9 increases the number of the units on the property from 450 to 625. This is actually a decrease from what we originally proposed at Planning Commission. We dropped it from 650 to 625. But again, it only allows those additional 175 units with the approval of a site plan for a grocery store. We're trying to tie this to the development of the grocery store. These changes really are here to help us attract the residential builders and provide the rooftops to get a higher end grocery store on site. Also just kind of wanted to note in response to some of neighbors' concerns, any residential development on the site will have its own pool or clubhouse, so it's not going to be using the Old Town subdivision facilities. We also updated our conditions throughout the process to address other parts of community feedback. Part of that is right-sizing the commercial development that would be primarily located along New Hope and Rock Quarry for what's appropriate to the area. So for example, in condition 1, we added back in medical uses that would allow like a pharmacy with a minute clinic. That was based on some community feedback we received. Condition 3 reduces that commercial from 360,000 to 285. We actually think that's more appropriate for a grocery anchored commercial development for the size of that property. And then again, we're tying, this was in the previous conditions, but we're tying development, commercial development to grocery store. So only 75,000 units until there's a site plan for a grocery store approved. In terms of the Old Town subdivision in particular, if you look on the map on the screen, there's that yellow highlighted line. We updated the zoning conditions to just be really clear and add some additional setbacks. So any buildings within 150 feet of that line have to be limited to 4 stories, even though zoning allows up to 5. It also increases the setback for bars, taverns, nightclubs from, I think it was 100 feet to 250 feet. And we added that additional open area for the net site area. That was a request specifically from Planning Commission. They wanted to see a little bit more of the property preserved. In terms of the neighborhood transition condition, we also added this one at Planning Commission. We heard a desire from the community members to have a 50-foot setback along the property lines. So we did our best to accommodate this request while maintaining flexibility for future development of the site. So we would have to have a protective yard to meet neighborhood transition requirements, and this condition commits to a type 2 or type 3 yard. This gets us close to what neighbors asked for, as there's already a 20-foot kind of buffer between the townhomes to the south of HOA property, and on the east, there's already greenscape parking and a road that averages anywhere from 50 to 150 feet between the property line and any of the townhome lots. So here, we're trying to meet those concerns while providing flexibility. We want to be conscious of the conditions that we add. There's no site plan contemplated for this property yet, and various factors like location of easements could further affect the developable area. Overall, these changes reduce traffic impacts for the site. I know that's one of the concerns along Rock Quarry and New Hope and Animos in particular. So under the current approved uses, we're about 21,627 daily trips. These proposed uses drops that down to 20,791. So it is a reduction in overall traffic impact, and that's our own independent analysis. The staff report finds the same thing. Overall, the staff found this consistent with the comp plan, the future land use plan. In terms of the urban format, they did note the inconsistency with the frontage. We would just note that that area along Rock Quarry, so it's less than about 50 feet long that triggers that requirement. And given the shape of the site and the major transmission line that runs through it, we just wanted to be careful, again, about allowing for flexibility of development in the future. Overall, we think that this request is consistent with the goals for the site. It's reasonable and in the public interest as it meets the neighbors' concerns and maintains some flexibility for us. We really want to see this site developed, and we think this helps us get one step closer to developing this vacant site. As such, we ask for your support and are here to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move to the opposition. We have 3 people signed up. Zainab yes.
Sorry, Mayor. Just to make a clarification, and I believe Ms. Kraut made that clear, the zoning condition regarding timing and the delivery of a grocery store is tied to administrative site review. So what that means is an applicant team or developer team would submit plans for review. And it's likely at that time in the development process that they would have an anchor tenant identified to deliver a grocery store. But there is some outcome of qualifying for the condition by submitting and getting an ASR approved that a grocery store may actually not be delivered. I think that would be an exceptional outlier, knowing what we know about who is involved in a project at the time of ASR, but just a clarification for you to consider.
Thank you. Okay, so now resetting the clock to 8 minutes, and we have Zainab Aladina, Dev Mashriwala, and Katie Lee.
Good morning, Mayor and council members. My name is Zainab Alidina, and I'm speaking on behalf of many residents of the Old Town community, which sits directly next to this proposed development. I'm also the HOA president for Trace at Old Town, but I'm here as an individual. First, I want to emphasize that our neighborhood is very engaged in this process. The 2 neighborhood meetings for this rezoning each had about 50 to 60 residents in attendance. And many of us are here today. Raise your hand if you're here for Old Town. Yep. We're all here for that. All right, so this level of participation shows you how much people care about the outcome of this project and how it will shape our community for years to come. I also want to acknowledge that the developer has made several improvements based on neighborhood feedback, and we really do appreciate that. These are all meaningful steps, and we thank the applicants for listening. However, reducing the project by 25 units does not meaningfully change the overall impact. Under the original zoning conditions, the site allowed 450 apartments, each limited to 2 bedrooms. That meant the original plan anticipated about 900 bedrooms. Under the current proposal, there are no bedroom limits, and the project would now include 625 units. Even assuming an average of 3 bedrooms per unit, that's 1,800 more bedrooms. So roughly double the residency intensity originally contemplated for this site. This translates into significantly more residents, more cars, more pressure on the roads, utilities, and service in the area of Southeast Raleigh that already struggles with infrastructure and amenities. So our community understands that development will happen here, and we're not asking to stop it, but we are asking for a reasonable compromise. We really do want this grocery store, but it shouldn't come at the expense of everybody living in that area. We asked that the project be capped at 550 units. That still allows 100 more units than the original zoning permitted, while keeping growth at a level that our infrastructure has a better chance of supporting. It is a fair middle ground between the developer's request and the original entitlement. We believe this approach allows the project to move forward while respecting the needs of the existing community. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Good morning, or good evening, council members. Sorry, I've been at work all day. Myself and many others in the Trace at Old Town neighborhood are in extreme opposal of these rezoning changes. The first is the increase in apartment numbers. When I looked today, there were over 70 vacant apartments within a 2-mile radius of the Trace at Old Town neighborhood. All of them were within the reasonable price around that area. Some of them were open for more than 30 days or more, and the longest one that I saw had been open for over 70 days without a tenant. Within 5 miles of our neighborhood, there's already 3 city-funded affordable rental developments, indicating that there is already a saturation of subsidized housing in and around our area. More apartments will not solve Raleigh's current housing issue, as the issue is not that the space does not exist, but rather that the developers and landlords of the space have priced these homes out of reach of average income families. There will never be enough space until the developers are held accountable and rent caps are imposed on areas where housing is most urgently needed, which is also where the empty space is more prevalent. Once that has been accomplished, then the discussion of additional units can be raised. As it is, Raleigh's vacancy rate is already significantly above the recommended healthy vacancy rate of 5 to 8%, with our city sitting at 11.8%, which is higher than both the national and state average. There is no evidence-based, fact-supported reason for any additional apartments in our area that amounts to anything other than corporate greed. Southeast Raleigh is also a historically high crime area of Raleigh, with the majority of those crimes being property related. Our most recent crime score was an F. We have devised a community watch program and close relationships with the RPD just to try and manage the significant property crimes happening every year in our neighborhood alone, most of which are vandalization, break-ins, and destruction of property. Additional vacancies, which is likely given the already high vacancy percentage, will lead to increased petty crimes and lack of both perceived and actual safety, reducing long-term investment opportunity and driving out already established residents. As Mr. Clem very well pointed out, there is no solid breakdown guarantee of a grocery store. The developer said that this is because they are looking for population density, which is interesting because we are actually classified by the FDA as a food desert. So I'm curious to know why we would be unqualified for a grocery store if we are classified by the government as a food desert. This is nothing but an underhanded delay tactic and a way for the developers to wiggle out of making less profit because retail is not as profitable as apartments. So they would like to cut that out entirely, and that's one way that they can do it. Southeast Raleigh is also predominantly a minority area with African Americans and Hispanic families. Our median house price is low compared to the four closest zip codes around us, and it is $200,000 lower of the average income. Excuse me, sorry. The median house price is $200,000 lower than the four closest zip codes, and the average income is $100,000 lower. Is it this council's desire to continue to see people of color once again pushed to the side in favor of making sure big bank developers are happy? As the councilwoman very elegantly pointed out earlier, a lot of developments have been proposed over the years, and they were opposed because of transportation or other infrastructure issues. If those infrastructure issues haven't been fixed, which they haven't, and they weren't good enough for the buyers that were paying full price, why are they good enough for affordable housing? Why do we continue to push Raleigh's poorest residents into the least developed parts of our city? I ask you, council, to think carefully about the answer to that question before you take your vote and understand whose side you're on when you do. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Dev Mashwala. I also live in the Old Town community next to this proposed development, and I'm also the HOA vice president, but I am here as a concerned citizen. Our neighborhood has been very engaged in this process, and while we appreciate the adjustments that have been made, we do not believe that they accurately reflect two of the concerns that we face today, which are traffic and safety. So starting with traffic, since January 1st of 2024, the intersection at South New Hope Road and Rock Quarry Road has experienced 57 accidents, and there's been an additional 8 accidents at the intersection of Anamosa Street and South New Hope, which is 65 accidents in just over 2 years. For context, a typical intersection sees about 5 to 15 per year, so this has far exceeded that average. Adding more residential units, we believe, will increase traffic congestion and just conflicts at intersections that are already unsafe. But beyond traffic, personal safety concerns have also been a paramount issue amongst residents. Our area's crime score has rapidly dropped from a B to an F in 2024 and has remained there for 2 years, which also reflects growing concerns. We are already seeing the effects of increased turnover and instability in Old Town and surrounding areas where residents are noticing more frequent safety issues. And the rapid increases in density without matching infrastructure can lead to higher residential turnover, making it harder to maintain long-term community stability, an important factor in overall safety. Southeast Raleigh already has far more density than the infrastructure supports. We're currently dealing with a ton of stormwater and sewage issues, and as Katie pointed, this area is currently is classified as a food desert. That's actually why the rezoning for Z1125, which is directly across the street, was denied due to its location in a floodplain and with major stormwater and sewage infrastructure concerns. And these are just not isolated issues. At the last Planning Commission event, Commissioner Omakaye actually stated that these rezonings need to be evaluated as a collective, not in a vacuum, because all of their issues end up compounding. And it's important to note that she was the only one who was twice opposed to this rezoning. During the last, and we do understand that this is already a mixed-use proposal, but this rezoning shifts the balance further towards residential and increases the
Thank you. All right, I will close the hearing and.
Let me start with them if they have questions.
Start down here, okay.
Yep. Maybe a question for the applicant. After hearing from the speakers, it sounds like there's still a lot of community consternation. The one specific request that I drew out of those is a request to see the that delta on the new residential entitlement be limited to 550. Is that something you've spoken with the residents about? Have you considered that? Would you consider that, et cetera?
Thank you for your question. It was something that was brought up at Planning Commission, and we did reduce from 650 to 625. We're, here to hear the council's concerns and take on that. But I do think, here, we're going from 450 to 625. We've already reduced, and we're still tying it to the development of the grocery store. And what we've heard is really from the higher end grocers is, the denser, the better to attract. So, thank you.
Other questions?
I asked staff about the inconsistency with the urban form map. I did read the section in terms of being on a potential transit corridor. So can you just speak to that inconsistency on the urban form map?
Sure. So with the urban format, it does propose some type of urban frontage. I think here, the only piece of our property that aligns with rock quarry is less than 50 feet wide. So it's a very small portion of it. There's also just the transmission line that's on the site, a limited developable area. So in order to kind of protect kind of future development, we didn't want to try to craft a condition that limited it in the future for such a small area.
The transmission line, can we pull up the map just so I can see the location of the transmission line?
Let's see. So it's the highlighted area in blue. So you have this developable area, but really the only thing that's triggering that urban format is this very tiny strip right here.
Thank you.
So before you step away, I'm sure you and Matthew kind of got me a little bit confused. What grocery store are you trying to get? Because I know further up on Barwell, there's a Food Lion, and there's another Food Lion on the other end of Rock Quarry. So what grocery store are you trying to attract?
So our goal is to provide a variety in the area, and we do know that there are several Food Lions around. So preferably a higher end grocery store or a different type of grocery store for the area.
But you don't have anything secured with any particular?
We don't, because all of them have looked at us and, in our conversations have really wanted that increased residential density on site. So we've had interest, but we don't have commitments yet.
Okay, thank
That's
you.
why we're here.
Couple questions. First question I have is, one of the opposition, they mentioned affordable housing as far as apartments. Are these affordable housing rental or is this market rate?
Yeah, so we don't have necessarily all of our multifamily developers lined up with, so we're still open to what that looks like on the site.
But you don't have anyone lined up to provide any affordable housing or
I think we're
tax credit?
talking to both, but nothing fully secured
Okay.
at this point.
What has delayed this project so far? Because this rezoning happened in 2019, and
Sure.
I've been pushing for a grocery store forever over here, even before these residents moved in.
Sure.
So what's delayed the grocery store or development overall?
Sure. So I think part of the grocery store is just trying to secure the commitment, the need for that residential density. I think overall, there are some other issues on site in terms of like stormwater management and development. We have a cooperative development agreement with the overall Old Town subdivision. And so one of the things that we're trying to figure out is getting a stormwater pond, because under that agreement, these property owners can't build it. It's someone else's responsibility. So we're also working through that to make sure that this development does happen, because my clients, the applicant, that's what they want. They want to put the grocery store in. They want to kind of meet the request of council here.
Okay. Who's here from Stormwater? Everyone's blending in. Can you speak to the issue they're having with the stormwater? At least from a city perspective?
Good evening. Yes, so there is another developer that is building the stormwater devices for these lots.
Is it the same developer that built all the other residential?
I believe so.
Okay. Holly Company?
Yeah.
Okay.
Holly Company. And so those permits have been issued, and we're just waiting for construction for those stormwater management devices to begin.
How long have those permits been issued?
I would say at least 5 months now.
Okay, okay. So we're just waiting for them to start on the infrastructure so that stormwater piece can be addressed?
That's correct.
Because even if this were to be approved, if the stormwater part isn't done, they still can't move forward. Is that correct?
Correct. They wouldn't be able to get COs on any of the future buildings here, like without the stormwater devices in place. So it's not, they don't have to wait to start construction on these, on those stormwater devices, but the stormwater devices need to be complete by the time they're getting to the certificate of occupancy level. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you. And I know, I think it was Zainab, you mentioned president of the HOA. Are you president of HOA or Halley Company? Okay, so can you speak to the? Sorry.
No, that's fine.
So you're president of the townhome HOA?
Yeah, just the townhomes, not the master. That's still Eric from Haley Group.
Okay, so the master HOA is who's over this
And
stormwater
they're
connection?
overlooking they're doing the stormwater side of things, yeah.
Okay, okay. Is anyone here from Halley? I guess not. Okay, thank you. So that's one thing. It sounds like it's been delayed, and I will share this. I have a classmate way back from high school. Before this was developed, before Halley did their part, I asked the question, what's taking so long to get grocery stores developed? And one of the things, and just retail period, and one of the things he shared with me was rooftops. And when they talk about rooftops, they also talk about disposable income as far as those rooftops. That's one of the reasons why, and I think from talking to these residents, when we talk about affordable housing and things, we want to see a mix. No one wants to see everything isolated in one area. You don't want to see it all over in District A. We don't want to see it all over in District C. So I think that's the thing that here, I know I've been trying to balance, I've been trying to push. This was supposed to have been a golf community that was built in 2007. The economy crashed. And when the economy crashed, this went into foreclosure. When it went into foreclosure, 2015 was when it was finally sold to Halley Company, who built all the residential townhomes and those other apartments, 366 apartments that are on the corner of Raleigh, waiting on Toll Brothers to build some senior housing, well, residential housing in the back. And then we had the previous rezoning case across the street. There's a creek there. It didn't make sense to put residential there when the biggest thing, the biggest push that everybody has had and everyone's been pushing in this community is more retail. They're tired. I love my neighboring communities, but they're tired of having to leave the community to go to a grocery store, to go to a pharmacy, all of those things. So now we're at a mix. The question is, we have an opportunity to move forward, and there are changes. The question is, will these changes foster that growth and that development? If I had a crystal ball, I would tell you the answer, but I don't. But one thing I can say is, I know the work and the labor that goes all the way back to when Councilmember James West was sitting up here trying to get this property, trying to get something developed in this community. And it continued on to Councilmember Weeks. And now here I am. And I'm sorry, this has to move forward. It needs to move forward while I'm still here. So before I say anything else, I'm gonna leave it. I see Councilman Silver is there. But you know, we have to find a way to figure out, you know, how do we get Southeast Raleigh out of that food desert to reflect the other parts of this community and others of the city. You know, I'm a product. I didn't move here. I was born here. I was born here. And I've seen the challenges. I've seen the things. We talk about income and crime rates. They look at the district. Actually, District C crime rate has gone down compared to our other districts. Is it still too high? Yes, it's way too high. It's way too high. I know the challenges. I've met with these residents. I've been over there a number of times to talk about the issues that they're having. Some of the issues they're having, it doesn't matter what we do here for some of those issues. but we're still trying to work and we're still trying to address them. So that's where I stand, and at the appropriate time, I'm going to make a motion to approve.
Okay, Counselor Silver.
I want to amplify what Councilmember Branch has just stated. Probably have a long history with this project as well. But for people to understand and what the applicant said about having rooftops, and Councilmember said it as well, when you look at a supermarket, people look at a trade area. They draw a circle. And within that circle, they want to determine how much income can be generated to support a grocery store so it does not close after a short period of time. If there's less disposable income, that circle gets larger. And then it starts to overlap with other circles from other supermarkets. And so you do need the density to support it. So that's one of the reasons I'm going to support this case, because that is true. There are many places that have multiple supermarkets in a close distance. The disposable income is higher. So you'll see over every quarter of a mile a supermarket. That is not the case in Southeast. And having more residential units will give the best likelihood of not just a supermarket opening or grocery store, that it's staying open. Also about the consistency, which to me is very important. After reading both the staff report and hearing the applicant talk about the site conditions, having an urban frontage at this location probably would not be in the best interest at this time. And so I too, when the time comes as a motion, I'll be supporting this case.
Any other comments? If y'all want to make a motion.
I move to adopt the proposed consensus statement dated April 7th, 2026, contained in the agenda materials, and to approve the zoning amendment with the adoption and effective dates described in the agenda items under recommended action.
Second.
All in favor of the motion, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. So that is unanimous. All right, thank you all. All right, we will move on to Z2925 Trailwood Drive again, but separate case. Matthew Clem.
Yep, thank you, Mayor. This is a request to rezone 2.8 acres from residential 4 with the special residential parking overlay to residential 10, conditional use with the special residential parking overlay district. The Planning Commission recommends approval 8-0. This is consistent with the future land use map and the comprehensive plan overall. This is the site. Here we are again on Trailwood Drive. You can see Avon Ferry to the north, Centennial Campus and Lake Raleigh to the east. Walnut Creek Greenway runs kind of here. Yep. A couple of views on the site. It's currently developed with single house. The conditions on this case prohibit the uses listed in condition number 1. The apartment building type is prohibited. Residential development is limited to 32 dwelling units. These two conditions deal with the property adjacent to the south. So the first condition states that for a depth of 200 feet into the site, a minimum building setback of 20 feet shall be developed adjacent to the property to the south. And I know that the applicant has a diagram showing what that looks like. If not, I can draw it here in a minute. Condition number 5 similarly addresses the property to the south. It says for the first 300 feet of lot depth, there shall be increased landscaping along the southern property line. And there's a planting schedule for that in the zoning conditions. These next conditions deal with light spillage, pole-mounted lighting on the property to reduce light spill. So the rezoning request would increase the permitted density from 24 units to 32 units. And there are some changes to the setbacks as well, going from the R4 to the R10 district. Consistent with the low-scale residential designation on the future land use map and consistent with the urban form map as well. R10 is consistent with low-scale residential when it is in frequent transit areas. So the property farther to the south was inconsistent with the future land use map and the R10 zoning. This one is consistent because it is with close walking distance to frequent transit along Avon Ferry Road. Consistent policies here about increasing development capacity in the city and specifically capitalizing on transit access, more infill compatibility and zoning for housing policies referenced here. Inconsistent with zoning and infrastructure impacts and response time standards. And this is the Planning Commission's recommendation for approval.
Okay, questions for Mr. Clem?
Yeah. I'm trying to understand the future land use consistency. In the staff report, you're saying that R6 is normally the limit, but if there's an RX3 in a core transit area, I thought it also said in the staff report, because there's no sidewalk connectivity, it is not accessible to transit. So I'm just trying to reconcile the statement in the staff report about it does say close to a greenway, but for this one too, it said that there's no sidewalk connection. They will build it on the frontage of their property, but the balance of trail would not be there. And I'm trying to, I was going to ask a question about the greenway, but you're showing it here on the map, but your line went in a very different direction. So I'm just trying to square that about the future land use consistency, and then with the frequent transit area, just like the previous case, you can't walk to the transit stop.
Right, there are no sidewalks there today. As there are sidewalks existing here connecting to the greenway. As this property to the north develops, sidewalks will be developed or delivered by the developer at that time. So based on its proximity to the transit infrastructure, it is an appropriate level of density as far as the comprehensive plan is concerned. And over time, as these properties develop, there will be more sidewalk infrastructure delivered. So the idea is that the plan is providing a long-term vision for how things grow and change over time. And because we have a limited ability to do these types of improvements on NCDOT roads, as these properties develop, we get infrastructure delivered by those developments.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, if not, I will open the public hearing. We have 3 people signed up in support: Worth Mills, Ross Massey, and Jen Truman.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. Worth Mills with Longleaf Law Partners. I'm here on behalf of Arya Asghari. He is the owner of the 2 lots. He's a Raleigh resident and a local builder. Ross Massey, Director of Civil Engineering with Swift Partners, is also here to answer questions. I want to focus too on the discussion about sidewalk connectivity. The 2 properties that look forested, undeveloped to our north are currently under a pending rezoning request. That is Z3825. Those 2 properties were rezoned R6 a couple of years ago, and the applicant has refiled a new application to rezone those properties and one more across Trailwood to RX3. That being said, I think there's a clear intent of that property owner, who again owns both of those properties, to eventually develop that property, whether it be for their existing R6 zoning or their requested RX3 zoning. And so our expectation is that either sort of simultaneous or shortly thereafter, if our rezoning case is approved, that there will be some cohesive sidewalk network, at least from our southern boundary, spanning the length, the western length of Trailwood, that will then connect you both to Avon Ferry and also to the Walnut Creek Greenway Trail. I want to highlight a couple of things about the existing conditions. The property was subdivided in 2009. This is a sort of enhanced, blown-up version of the subdivision plat. Just wanting to highlight that there is existing tree conservation area along our southwest corner, as well as secondary tree conservation area along our frontage of Trailwood Drive. This is the existing Trailwood NCOD. Again, the previous case that you heard was sort of right in the middle of the overlay district. Our property is not in the overlay district. We do have that special residential parking overlay district, but I just wanted to highlight sort of where the Trailwood NCOD is in relation to our request. And as Matt mentioned, we are within a frequent transit area. I think both from the urban thoroughfare transit emphasis corridor designation on Avon Ferry, as well as the designation along Gorman Road. So we have high frequency bus travel planned along both of those roads. We have a mixed use center on the west side of the Gorman Street Avon Ferry intersection. I did want to highlight some of the recently proposed conditions that came about between our first and second Planning Commission meeting. After that first meeting, we met again with Trailwood neighbors on a virtual meeting and delivered the following zoning conditions in response to some more of their concerns. The first being that residential development shall not exceed 32 units. Under a straight R10 zoning, we would be permitted up to 40 homes. So what this translates to is an 8-unit increase when compared to the maximum number of homes that you could build under the current R4 zoning. We also increased the setbacks to our southern property line, our southern neighbor, which again is sort of the northwest boundary for the Trailwood NCOD. So for the first 200 feet of our property's lot depth, we wanted to establish at least a 20-foot building setback. Under R4 zoning, if you were to maybe say further subdivide this property and just line up single-family detached homes along Trailwood, you would be looking at a 10-foot minimum side yard setback with no required screening. So what we've tried to do here is create some additional distance between any future development and our neighbor to the south. And you can see that his house sort of shades to the north, so we know that this is especially sensitive, sort of given the layout of both of these two lots. We also included a screening condition that applies for the first 300 feet of the property's lot depth. We chose 300 because we think that's where sort of the maximum sort of length of development's going to be. We expect these to be served by private drives, private streets. The UDO says that townhomes can't be any farther than 300 feet from a public right-of-way. So that's sort of our demarcation line for screening. What we've offered to do is plant 30 evergreen shrubs per 100 feet with a planting height of 3 feet and an average mature height of at least 10 feet, 2 understory trees and 2 shade trees per 100 linear feet as well. When looking at the types of shrubs, we want, again, bushy, thick, fast-growing shrubs. We think a Nellie Stevens holly is sort of a great candidate for the type of green screen that we can create at the ground level, and then having those shade trees and those understory trees further enhance this sort of green screen that we want to create along our southern boundary line. And then this is a concern that we heard from neighbors at that December meeting as it relates to lighting. We offered new conditions that required minimum setbacks for pole-mounted lighting fixtures, maximum height of pole-mounted lighting fixtures, and bringing the maximum light level of any pole-mounted light fixtures to 0.0 foot candles at the 1132 Trailwood Drive property line. Again, trying to minimize the impacts as much as possible to our southern neighbor, who is, again, sort of the northwest boundary of the Trailwood NCOD. We think this case represents a gentle density increase over current zoning. We think that we have offered a number of conditions that address and mitigate the impacts to the existing NCOD and our southern neighbor. For those reasons, we think that this case is reasonable and in the public interest. Happy to answer any questions, and we appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight.
Hello again. Checking how much time. Okay. Jen Truman, as I mentioned in the earlier case, I live just a neighborhood or two over and travel here regularly. And I want to talk a little bit about that because the people who live on Trailwood are not the only people that live in Southwest Raleigh. And it's one of the only roads that connect many neighborhoods. So all of the people who bike along our beautiful bike path on Lineberry have to connect to Trailwood and ride their bike on it to connect to the bike lane that's on Thistledown. And that spits us out on Gorman Street. So if we want to go anywhere on Avon Ferry for transit-oriented things, I actually choose to bike on Trailwood because it's safer than Gorman Street. Those aren't great options. I wish we had better options, for sure. But I want to be clear that this project is one step in getting there. If we wait until we have sidewalks and bike lanes to add housing, we'll never have housing and we'll never have bike lanes and sidewalks. This is the kind of project that we need. This is the right place for housing. If I was supportive of apartments here, I'm certainly supportive of less density here. The only problem with this case is it's not enough density because the neighborhood has talked it down. We really, truly need housing in this place. It is the place that there needs to be more housing, and it makes sense here. Please vote yes.
Okay. That concludes the supportive side. We now have 2 people signed up in opposition, John Totten and Sarah Dietrich, and we can reset the clock to 8.
Hi, I think I'm going to be taking the 8 minutes because Sarah is no longer going to speak. Is that okay? Okay. Hello, good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm John Totten. My family and I live at Trailwood, 1132 Trailwood, just south of the Z29 property. We've lived there for 9 years. I'm asking you to deny this rezoning request from R4 to R10 based on objective planning principles, the preservation of a carefully designed zoning transition that has served the area for over a decade, and data-driven safety concerns. We do appreciate the conditions that have been put forth so far, and we do feel that in part we've been listened to, and so I just wanted to acknowledge that. I think the core issue is eliminating intentional transition zones. This property currently serves as an intentional transition zone between R2 Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District and higher density planned development. The current zoning progression is R2 to R4 to R6, each step increasing density gradually, exactly as the UDO and comprehensive plan envision. Approving the proposed R10 zoning eliminates the transition entirely and violates 2 fundamental comprehensive plan policies. It would take us from R2 to R10 to R6, as it was mentioned related to the Z38 property down the hill. Policy LU 5.4 requires appropriate graduated transitions between different densities, not abrupt jumps. It contemplates R2 to R4 to R6, not leaping from R2 to R10. Policy LU 8.12 states that infill development should be consistent with the design elements of adjacent structures, including setbacks, height, and massing. This property sits between a 1-story single-family home and a currently planned R6 zone development. That's the one that is now, after pulling their existing plan, seeking RX3. R10 zoning, allowing up to 3+ stories and 32 units, is not consistent with those neighbors. UDO violations are clear. UDO section 5.4.3 defines NCODs as encouraging compatible infill development, R4 with 12 to 24, depending on how this is being calculated. I'm not an expert in this. Is compatible. R10 with 32 is not. UDO Chapter 2 establishes an intentional density hierarchy where transition matters. Skipping from R2 to R10 violates that. Comprehensive Plan Policy LU 5.4 requires graduated transitions. R2 to R10 is an abrupt jump. Future land use map designates this area low-scale residential, missing middle dwelling types. Tree conservation requirements apply to properties over 2 acres. This property is 2.5. I'm still getting used to this, but I'm understanding that there's a bonus related to the frequent transit area, and so that may be how the tree conservation is not being provided. I'm under the assumption, based on what has been shared with me, that there's not true tree conservation, there is additional setbacks. So that means 100-year-old trees will be cut down and replaced with fast-growing trees. We've been hit on a lot of diversity questions. Our neighborhood is diverse, beyond 49 single-family homes in the NCOD. We're surrounded by 670 nearby apartments, multiple townhome developments, and smaller single-family homes. Within the NCOD, we have residents from China, India, Ethiopia, Japan, and Latin America, ranging from young families to retirees, and we skew on the lower income side of average. What unifies us is a shared commitment to preserving wooded lots, protecting the fragile ecosystem that has been mentioned. I think Councilmember Fort had addressed that. We support affordable housing and would welcome smaller owner-occupied homes like those along Thistledown Street. We work collaboratively with the Z38 developer on a previous townhome proposal for 40 units down there, which they abandoned without explanation. We are not anti-growth. We are opposed to forcing higher density development and onto a site with inadequate infrastructure and documented safety hazards, because that is inequitable. Opposing R10 does not mean opposing housing diversity. Current R4 zoning permits approximately 12 to 24 units on this 2.5 acre property, duplexes, triplexes, townhomes, and small apartments. City zone missing middle reform defined missing middle as housing typically between 2 to 16 units. 12 units is missing middle, 32 is not. What's proposed here is larger scale apartment density, more appropriate for transit corridors, not a narrow county road with a conservation overlay. The developer already has the right to build housing diversity on this property. They're asking for permission to build density that's inappropriate for the site's location and infrastructure. This sets a dangerous precedent. Approving rezoning undermines NCOD citywide. Developers are learning that zoning is a temporary hurdle rather than a guideline to Raleigh's planning framework. This case is the third simultaneous rezoning request affecting Trailwood, including Z45 and Z38, which has been rezoned and now is already in a process of being rezoned again. This affects nearly 20% of the neighborhood and proposes over 400 units. Collectively, systematic erosion of the conservation protections is not hypothetical, it's happening right now. This is the first demolition case in our area. Z38 or Z29 represents a troubling new pattern. The demolition of a recently renovated home to the tune of $300,000 worth of improvements. Not only should this not qualify as infill based on the LU 8.12, but approving this signals to every homeowner in the R2 and R4 zone that they are at risk of speculative teardowns. Location matters. This is not transit-oriented in some ways. The map puts the site in a frequent transit area. However, it does go beyond the quarter-mile and half-mile frequent transit stops. There is currently no safe way to bike to transit, groceries, pharmacies. It all is dependent on that Z38 development that is in a flood zone, and there is a lot of contention around the damage that development will do. So I don't think it's a sure shot. I think we're getting the cart before the horse. When it comes to the safety data that was presented earlier, Trailwood's crash rate is 1.8 times the statewide average. Fatal crash rate is 2.3 times the state average. Trailwood's fatal crash rate is 2.3 times the state average. Trailwood Drive has no sidewalks. In that area, there are no sidewalks. The embankment on the side of that road is about a 12-foot drop-off. You might want to bike the Trailwood, but we seldom see people biking and or walking, and we have had multiple accidents recently. We are asking you to deny Z29 2025 and preserve the existing R4 zoning. Maintaining the existing zoning is not a prohibition on development. It allows approximately 12 to 24 units of middle-income missing middle housing, maintains intentional zoning transition, respects the conservation overlay, avoids overwhelming dangerous infrastructure, and follows the UDO and comp plan. Over the past 2 years, the council has denied 2 of 54 zoning cases.
I mean, the mic turns off, so. Yeah, I think, yeah. All right. Thank you. Okay, I will close the hearing. Questions? Yep.
Yep. A couple questions for staff. One is that the commenter mentioned that TCA would not be applicable, but this site is 2.8 acres, so I'm hoping there's just a misunderstanding that TCA would be applicable because it's over 2 acres, right?
Yep. I think from what I gathered from the comments was a reference to the difference in TCA being required on properties like this and TCA being required when properties have the Transit Overlay District TOD zoning on them. All properties in the city that are greater than 2 acres are required to have TCA. If a property is zoned with the TOD Overlay District, that 2 acre threshold goes up to 4 acres.
Got it. But that's not applied to this?
It is not.
Parcel. Okay, I've got one more for you. Also, the speaker mentioned the FTDO, frequent transit development option, and I think, again, hopefully just a misunderstanding, is there's a density bonus there, which allows for a greater number of units. However, not applicable in this case because it's not in an FTDO, or maybe it is in a frequent transit area, but there's also the unit limitation in the conditions.
Correct. So the property as zoned would be, it's in a frequent transit area, so it could take advantage of the FTDO, the frequent transit development option. Under the proposed zoning, the unit count is capped at 32 units, and so would not be, they would not avail themselves to the FTDO because of that limit.
Got it. Okay, helpful. I also have one for the applicant, if that's okay. Worth, can you just speak to why your client is not just building by right? It's a relatively modest increase, a lot of rigmarole to go through.
Yes, I can speak to that. So correct, the property is within that frequent transit area and would be eligible for that development option. However, the plan for these townhomes or the cottage court development, whatever sort of plans are to go here, is that it would be fee simple for sale townhomes. The way that the FTDO is currently written, I believe it's related to the minimum lot width or minimum site width as it's currently written. It doesn't allow for that option when you have a for sale townhome product. I believe for that to work, it needs to be a true multifamily building to meet that minimum lot width. Matt may have some corrections for me, but that's been our experience in the past where we otherwise would have that option, but because the developer is looking to sell those lots rather than rent, they can't condominiumize them and locate them all on the same lot.
Now I'm even more confused. I have a question, a follow-up question for staff. So if this case is denied, what can they build by right? 24. Of the same type, though.
Yeah, based on our vision, that would be like 24 or like 12 duplex units or something like that.
Right, but they just can't do the condo type Okay. And these conditions, they've included the evergreen shrubs, the 100 linear feet, the 2 understory trees, the 2 shade trees, conditioning out the light pollution. Is any of that going to be required if they just do the by right 24? Okay.
Yeah, the property is currently general use zoning, so R4 with a special residential parking overlay. So all of the conditions that you see here are in addition to the base standards of the development code.
Okay. And so in exchange for the 8, yes, what it is, thank you, 8 additional units, they're adding these other conditions. Okay, that's helpful, thank you.
Other? Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to thank, I know the neighbors have been very engaged in this, and I know the applicant's team has done their best to, I think, respond to concerns. Of the 3 Trailwood cases, this is really the least, impact overall in terms of the number of units, and I think it's pretty reasonable. And the fact that we have this issue with the way that our FTDO policy is currently written that prevents for sale townhomes. I think that's a product that is actually a nice transition from the NCOD area to, a lot of the apartments that are around, and it's a product that's, I think, in demand. So with that, I am going to make a motion to approve this case. This is, I move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated April 7th, 2026, contained in the agenda materials, and to approve the zoning amendment with the adoption and effective dates described in the agenda item under recommended action.
I was going to say second. I also will add, I think it's going to be a potentially worse outcome for some of these neighbors if it's denied, because they're not going to get these conditions as planting and light pollution, all that other stuff. So I'm happy to second this one.
Okay, any other discussion? Not all in favor of the motion, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Okay, so we have a 6-2 vote on that. Thank you. Okay, next we're moving on to Z3125, which is the North Blunt Street case.
Good evening again, Madam Mayor, members of council. Bynum Walter, Planning and Development. This is a request for 516 North Blunt Street. This is on the west side of Blunt Street. It's less than a half an acre, going from office mixed use with a 3-story height limit, has a detached frontage now. The general historic overlay district would remain in place, and the new base district proposed is a commercial mixed use district with a 3-story height limit and some conditions. The Raleigh Historic Development Commission recommends approval. Planning Commission recommends denial. This is consistent with the future land use map as well as the 2030 comprehensive plan overall. So here's a look at the site. You can see, again, on the east side of North Blunt, between Polk and William Drummond Way. So the applicant has offered a number of conditions here. They have restricted the allowed uses in the commercial mixed-use zoning district, reducing what would otherwise be allowed by right. They have limited event attendance to no more than 65 attendees, prohibited amplified sound out of doors, prohibited service of food or beverage outdoors after 9, established a requirement for a designated property manager to handle short-term rental and event operations on the property, provided some regulations around short-term rental guest parking, some landscaping requirements for the eastern property line, subject to certificate of appropriateness approval, also restrictions on overnight short-term rental occupancies per bedroom, and then restriction on vendor-related parking in the shared driveway with an adjacent property, and then some time-related restrictions on vendor deliveries. So the change here is that the Retail square footage would increase. I just would note that freestanding retail not permitted under the current zoning would have to be part of a mixed-use development, mixed-use building. So an increase there in total square footage as well as form that might take. So they have not offered a frontage designation, which is inconsistent with the urban form map. I would note that the Blunt Street Historic Overlay District, which is general historic overlay district, would remain in place. So certificate of appropriateness process controls would remain in place here, which are going to be addressing urban form issues. So this is consistent with the comprehensive plan, consistent with the future land use map, although inconsistent with the urban form map. Number of consistent policies here around managing commercial development impacts, complementary land uses and urban vitality, things of that nature. The frontage policy is the sole and consistent policy. Planning Commission recommends denial here. They felt that the current zoning is sufficient to allow for development of the site. There were a number of planning commissioners in opposition, feeling that there were no extraordinary circumstances about the request that would justify a recommendation of denial, and then the Historic Development Commission does recommend approval. What questions could I answer for you before you open the public hearing?
Questions for Ms. Walters? Yep.
Hi. A lot of these conditions seem, I guess, related to the behavior of the users. And I guess I wonder if you can speak to how enforcement works. I don't tend to think of zoning enforcement as being a real-time team like the police who might descend on the site and say, oh, you have to go back inside, or you have too many people here. So how does zoning enforcement work?
Right, we have I would say, a very diligent zoning enforcement team. They generally are responding to complaints from folks in the community. They are not staffed or really expected, based on how zoning enforcement typically works, to respond in real time. They are typically responding to persistent problems, not problems of the moment. So typically what would happen is they would receive information about a complaint, go out and investigate, collect information, do some research. For an of-the-moment issue, it's a kind of it's just not how they operate.
Sure.
Yep.
And what does happen if a property is found to be in violation?
Right, so the typical process is that first there's a notice of violation, an expectation that the property will bring itself into compliance. Persistent violation, again, this is really, the process is geared towards ongoing persistent problem, not of the moment. And so, the ongoing persistent problem might face a $500 a day fine for the one thing that happened last night, and now it's already over. Not a lot of leverage for the program.
Question. So one of the conditions says electronically amplified sound shall not be permitted outdoors. So could they have a live band?
I don't think if we're amplified, no.
But if it was just bluegrass or like something as
I
long as there's no
believe,
electronics.
Yes, they could. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other? All right, we will open the hearing, and we have Isabel Maddox in support.
Good evening, members of the council. I'm Isabel Maddox here tonight, representing 1893 LLC, the owner of this property. I have a presentation that I'm going to show you. But I did want to respond to a couple of comments about the zoning conditions and how enforcement works. First of all, the city of Raleigh, all zoning is complaint-based. And so that's how they come out and check something. There are a number of zoning UDO requirements in our code that deal with like you said, behavioral issues or number of people issues. There's number of people for schools, for daycares. There are, for certain living arrangements. There are on-site managers required in certain types of facilities. There's certainly the noise ordinance is behavioral. There are parking issues that the city deals with all the time. So I think many of the conditions are very parallel to other zoning requirements that are enforced and that the city does enforce. So getting to my presentation. And to your question, Corey, yes, you could have an unamplified band, but I think you'll find even Bluegrass, they have an amplifier. So that's an unlikely scenario. That's just the house from the Blunt Street view. Here's the aerial. And on this block, I will note that almost every parcel on this block is entitled to do event space other than ours and maybe 2 others. Several of them actively have events. There's a large church on the block, there's an art gallery, and there's the Merriman Wynn event space on this same block. They don't have, none of those users have any zoning conditions that bind them as we are proposing here tonight. Those are the 3 parcels that are not covered by this PD, which allows event space. Bynum went through the conditions. I won't go through those again, but I do think we've worked very hard to try to come up with conditions that are responsive to the neighbors' issues. And just to take a look, the noise, we have no amplified sound outdoors. We have no food and beverage service after 9 outside. Parking, we have said no vendor vehicles serving events shall park in the shared driveway, or no vendor deliveries breaking down, setting up should be there after 7 p.m. or before 7 a.m. So all that has to happen in other hours. We do have a restriction on the number of guests. We have an on-site property manager who could respond to any questions or issues. We have proposed a fence or a wall and screen plantings along the rear line to buffer the condos that back up to the site. We had initially proposed a specific buffer type, but the staff came back and said they'd rather us make that more general because we do have to get RHDC approval for that. So I think that's going to be controlled otherwise. There are some alternatives in this zoning that we have now that we could do here. We could have retirement home, a school, a daycare, medical. We could have an outdoor sports facility for less than 250 seats. We could have a bed and breakfast, a parking facility, a vet clinic. We could have retail sales. We could have R&D, community garden, nursery, produce stand, restaurant use, beauty salon, emergency shelter. And the one I want to focus on is the restaurant use. In OX, restaurant use is permitted. There are certain parameters. It can only be 4,000 feet, which would be plenty. For this house, we could include the ground floor of the house plus a nice outdoor area and still be within the 4,000 feet. You can do it 7 days a week, 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. Music is allowed. Noise ordinance is the only restriction that we would have, and we wouldn't contemplate violating that. Alcohol sales can be up to 70% of receipts for a restaurant in this context. And this is a real option. The family that owns this property has a son who lives in New York who operates a restaurant, and his restaurant is something like coffee, brunch, and cocktails. And so he has, fairly light food, but he does serve coffee and brunch, and it could be a 7-day-a-week operation if they wanted to do that. I think here we do have, I think there are some public benefits. This is an adaptive reuse of a historic home. It's a beautiful home, nicely redecorated. It sort of, I think it's something y'all should consider as equal protection. We've got users on this same block that can do an event space, and without this rezoning, we can't do that. And I think it adds to a mix of uses in the frequent transit area. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan, the future land use map. and some historic policies. The one inconsistency, and the staff report even says the lack of a frontage, it shouldn't be a big deal because since it's governed by RHDC, and we thought it's better just to leave that being the main governing for the street frontage. This building's going to stay as is. I do want to add a couple of things. On the uses, I had a comment or email from a counsel for Merriman Wynn raising a question about some uses that were not prohibited. And I think that was an oversight. There are a few uses that we were focusing so much on eliminating all these so-called indoor recreation uses that we did not want to do. We failed to exclude bars, and then there's some vehicle uses that would never seem to be appropriate here. We didn't exclude those. We're more than happy to come back in 2 weeks and add some additional excluded uses. So I did want to respond to that. And also, this same email indicated that we had an issue with garbage. We hadn't said how we would handle garbage. And I don't think we need to say that in a zoning case, but we feel like we can handle garbage without a dumpster. If we had a restaurant, we would probably have to do a dumpster. But for this use, I think we can have the caterers, and we've done some math and looked at industry standards for how much garbage per person is generated by a group of 65 people, and we think we can handle that with push-out receptacles, and take away from the site. We'll require all our vendors to remove it from the site that day or the next day. So with that, I'll reserve any time remaining for rebuttal. I don't think I have much. Thank you.
Okay. We will move to the opposition, and I have 5 people signed up: Andy Pettish, Chad Essick, John Crew, Scott Idle, Tom Urquhart.
Morning, Chris Crew. Mr. Urquhart will not be here. I'd just like to say on behalf of the preservation community that the concern is not the current use or the proposed use for this property, but that the zoning change will forever alter the value of the dirt under this property, and bringing this to more intensive use could very likely result in the demolition of this priceless historic structure for replacement with another commercial structure. So thank you.
Do you know how to pull up the presentation?
No.
Hi, my name's Scott Idle. I'm president of the Blunt Street Commons 1 HOA, and I live directly behind the property.
I'm Maggie McDonald. I live next to the property, and I have the shared driveway. And we do have a lot of neighbors here with us tonight, if you could raise your hands. Okay. Here is a view of our block of the Blunt Street Commons. As you can see, everything in blue are residences. We do have an art gallery and office, and you can see the Merriman Wen located on that bottom corner. We have an HOA. We're all bound under HOA covenants. No other property in this community can be an event venue. Even the Merriman Wen, they're bound by the HOA covenants. They are governed by them. There are strict rules with it. You see the 1893 house is located in the middle of our development, but it is not a member. It is not bound by the HOA covenants. This is why the Merriman Wen works in our community. It's located on a corner location. It has a private loading area. It's fully visually screened from the community, and most importantly, their event building was built with acoustic dampening materials, and the 3 carriage houses, go back one, directly behind it, they were also built with acoustic dampening materials to shield the entire residential community.
Here's a view from about Blunt Street looking back, and you can see that 1893's backyard, their event space, is open all the way back to our private road, John Haywood Way, and it's surrounded by existing 3-story condos. These condos, unlike the ones behind Merriman Wen, were not constructed to be able to deal with an added event space noise issue. There's also issues with visual screening and then the shared driveway. To try to figure out what we were up against, we hired Stewart Acoustical to do a noise report. They did project out, and as we expected, that would result in a significant impact in the noise levels in the area from the outdoor gatherings and the indoor amplified sound. This is a view out of my bedroom window. You'll note that all of the units surrounding it, all of our living spaces are on the second and third floors. This fence down below is a 6-foot fence. They're proposing a 6.5-foot fence with screening. You can see it will do almost nothing to screen anything visually, and Stewart confirmed in their report that it is highly ineffective for any sort of noise dampening from the event noise. These are pictures of their step lights that they had during some past events. Conditions do not address any event lighting that would be in addition to this.
Here's a visual of our shared driveway. In the red, you can see the easement. As the easement ends after 100 feet, the red line is showing the division between the private property. The yellow square shows the addition of a mudroom that they added to the property. Due to that, they have a 10-foot clearance between the end of the easement and the building. When you're talking about large box trucks for rentals and stuff, it's almost impossible to do it without encroaching onto my property, and especially if my car is pulled up to the front. Here's a picture of their current parking limitations. They can fit 4 cars comfortably. They can put 1 in a diagonal. It's likely going to encroach onto the private driveway. That includes the garage. So for a short period of time, last year they were able to host some very small events, 10 to 30 people. The driveway was consistently blocked. Here's a vendor truck. This is an example of a single event. You have a limo blocking the front of the driveway. Behind that is a blue sedan. In front of the blue sedan, there's a Jeep. That Jeep is parked about 2 inches from my car on my personal driveway. Conclusion, there's really no way to adequately visually or noise screen. There is a partial solution. We think if they did just daytime events, that would at least get rid of the obstacles of visual screening and noise. Remaining obstacles are still the shared driveway and then also a history of noncompliance. They can do the restaurant under the current zoning, and that would add a lot of value to our neighborhood. That's something that the neighborhood would support as long as it's within the rules and regulations in their current zoning.
Good evening, Andy Pettish, Pettish Law. I represent Maggie and Mackie McDonald, who reside at the home just north of the subject property with their 2 children. I just want to point out that this application is one that really is much closer to a request for forgiveness than permission. This property was acquired by the Forbes in 2022. And it wasn't until 2024 that they sought a determination from Justin Rometta as to whether they could do events. Mr. Rometta said that you could do them in connection with short-term rentals, but only as an accessory use, and you'd have to submit supporting documentation about exactly what you're going to do for us to be able to decide whether it is qualified as accessory use or not. They never submitted any information, but they went on to start operating events, which the McDonald's and other members tried to report to staff. Staff went out, was not able to observe the actual infractions, and so the McDonald's brought me in. I submitted a request for interpretation, put in about 30 exhibits. Mr. Rometta decided that there was a violation, issued an NOV that was appealed, and during the appeal, because that stays enforcement, they continue to have more intense and more frequent events for the next 5 months, from July to November of 2025, before that Board of Adjustment upheld the decision. So we have a track record here of noncompliance. And I think there's a number of enforcement potential issues here in, well, I'm going to wrap up so Chad, Mr. Essick has a couple of seconds. I would just say business growth is a valid policy goal, but bailing out business owners who make imprudent business decisions is a different proposition. And in this case, I would respectfully request that this council deny this application. Thank you.
I used to be on this side of the 8 minutes.
Chad, before you start, we all got your email, which was very thorough, so don't feel stressed to get it all in.
Fair. Well, great. I did send an email yesterday. Chad Essick, Porter Sproul here on behalf of Merriman Nguyen. We are currently opposed to this case as it currently exists for a number of reasons I expressed in my email. We are for event space in downtown Raleigh, but the challenges of this site and the conditions that are currently in place are not sufficient. And so for all the reasons I set forth in my email, the Merriman Nguyen is not supportive of this case at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We will close the hearing and.
Can I have my 37 seconds?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to respond to a couple of things. First, RHDC did approve this rezoning case, recommend approval. And we have no plan to remove the building. Like the person who spoke said, we'd be glad to even condition the case in that regard if necessary. As far as the driveway, shared driveways, somebody's blocking somebody over the history of the use. And Ms. McDonald has blocked my client's use of that driveway before as well. Interestingly, if they're supportive of a restaurant, I wonder why they're making such a big deal about this.
Okay. Now I will close the hearing. Okay.
Oh, go ahead. Start down there. I'll close.
I think I just have some more comments. I'm not prepared to support this case, at least not tonight. I mean, I think maybe I could get there, but there's a lot of stuff I just want to highlight. I think most of it, Mr. Essick actually put in his email. I'll start by saying this. I went into this case thinking this was a no-brainer. Why would we not approve this? I went out, I walked all over this property. It is very different than the event space that's on the corner here. Very, very different for a number of reasons. One of which is very obvious if you look at a map. There's really not a backyard here. The backyard goes directly, they're neighbors with these residential properties in the back. And so this idea of putting a fence along the back property line doesn't really solve that problem. The presentation from some of the neighbors raised some issues that I wasn't even really aware of, like the lighting that's already installed there. The current event space, they contain all of their outdoor amplified and events in an accessory structure that they built. They also have their own driveway and access point. So I just think there's a lot of different stuff about this site than the one on the corner. However, this corridor here is mostly commercial. The historic houses across the street I think are offices. You have the one event space on the corner, the one residential that's an adjacent neighbor with a shared driveway. But for the most part, it is commercial or retail-oriented spaces. So I can certainly get there on it being something other than a house people live in. I just don't think the conditions are tight enough right now for it to support the type of request that's being made. I do think that bar, nightclub, tavern needs to be excluded in the prohibited uses. I think there needs to be more done to address how many people could be in the space and how vendors may access the space, if that's even possible. The outdoor part of it is an issue for me. Just, this would be different if they had subdivided the lot, sold the back half to this townhouse community. They had built some townhouses back there, and then they're keeping everything in the front part. But their backyard it's not like backing up to residential, it's next to. Like if you're in the backyard of this property, you look to your left and there's a house, and look to your right and there's a house. And it's very different than the event space in the corner. And so, I'd be happy to try to get this to a place where everybody feels like they can win, where there are some conditions that prohibit just a free-for-all if it's a restaurant. But I just don't think it's, I don't think it's ready for tonight. If a vote was called for tonight, I would vote no. But I think if we can try to move this in the right direction, maybe we can get there. I don't know, though.
Okay.
I'll go last. Go ahead.
Yeah, Councilor Patton.
Just two clarifying questions for staff. One is, I feel like I've heard two different things related to the restaurant use. Can you just speak to whether a restaurant could be allowed today?
It would be my pleasure. Thanks for the question. So restaurant is not allowed here as a standalone use. A bed and breakfast might operate restaurant as an accessory use. For a restaurant to happen here otherwise, it would need to be part of a multi-tenant operation of the building, which would require a separate operator from any other program happening in the building.
Got it. Helpful. And my second one is, can you just, we saw a slide that suggested there's a notice of violation, Board of Adjustment appeal. Can you just like confirm that that is true?
I will need to consult with some colleagues about that.
Okay.
And your question is there
Just like, has there been a notice of violation and a Board of Adjustment appeal on this site?
There was a Board of Adjustment case that has been resolved.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just say for my part, we have turned down other cases that could be used as homes and are requesting to be used as something other than homes. And so I think we're faced with a similar thing here. I'm inclined to be consistent with that position. Again, I also, it resonates with me that the idea that the whole that the reason we're here is because of consistent, persistent violations of the existing zoning that have resulted in these notice of violations. And so to say, to think that an applicant didn't follow their zoning before and that they somehow now would, and that also to load down all these behavioral pieces into the zoning conditions places enforcement at the feet of a team that's not built to enforce that type of thing. And so for all those reasons, I would also vote to deny this case if the vote were called right now.
Councilor Branch.
Yeah, so I have a question for Isabel. The neighbors stated that they would be open to a earlier ending time. Right now, it's 9 p.m. Would your client be open to ending at 6? Never mind, your client answered the question for me. I see his head in the background.
I don't.
He said no.
I think that
He
would.
said no.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, he
can do
said
that.
no. This property.
But we do move. We're inside after that. We're an inside building, inside events.
I hear you. I hear you.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm good there. I too visited the site. I've driven by this site so many times, and I understand the challenges. I understand the issues that this represents, and in taking all of that into, my thought process and things that I've heard across the other parts of the city. Have you closed the?
Yeah.
So with it being closed, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion. And I move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated April 7th, 2026, contained in the general materials, and to deny the zoning amendment.
Any other conversation? All right. All in favor of the denial, aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. So that is unanimous. Okay. All right.
Yeah, maybe Cadence is asleep now, I hope.
Yeah, she is.
Okay.
But I got a really cute picture. That's George.
Oh, happy camper. Happy camper. She's like, you're at that meeting and I'm not. I know. She's so precious.
All right, next case is Z4025, which is Wake Forest Road.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. So this is a request for just under 2 acres, 2 parcels on the northwest side of Wake Forest Road, the east side of Mordecai Drive. It's going from office mixed use with a 3-story height limit and a neighborhood conservation overlay district, would remove the overlay, keep the base district the same, increase the height to 4 stories allowed, and add some conditions. Planning Commission recommends approval with a split vote. RHTC recommends denial with a split vote. This is consistent with the future land use map as well as your 2030 comprehensive plan. You can see this site here outlined in blue on the west side of Wake Forest Road, the east side of Mordecai Drive, on the south side of Mimosa Street. Aerial view of the site, so you can see Mordecai Historic Park on the north side of Mimosa Street here. See downtown to the south, some neighborhoods surrounding. This is a view of the site. A couple of views from the street. I would just note, perhaps of interest to you, this central portion of the structure on the site is the contributing portion of, to the historic district. So the applicant has offered a number of conditions here. They have narrowed the allowed office mixed-use district uses. They are providing for archival documentation for the existing contributing structure. They are offering advertisement and solicitation for salvage of the existing structure, which could be wholesale relocation and/or disassembly for components. For new construction, they are prohibiting use of vinyl siding with the exclusion of trim and decorative elements. They are specifying some frontage elements for build-to and pedestrian access on Wake Forest Road, along with restrictions on parking structures. They have provided for a height step back for structures within 50 feet of Mordecai Drive, having a maximum height of 3 stories, and then some setback requirements for Mordecai Drive and Mimosa Street for a 10-foot minimum with provisions for adjustment relative to right-of-way expansion. So what's allowed here now is we forecast about 80 units could be built here now. The increase would, the additional story and height would increase the total number of allowed units. The front setback is, I'm sorry, it's late. I apologize.
We can take a break.
The range of front setback is narrowing very modestly, but the zoning condition does require at least a 10-foot setback on Mordecai and Mimosa, which could vary depending on whether that's the, depending on building orientation. And then the office and the office square footage is going up here. Retail square footage is going down modestly. This is consistent with the comprehensive plan, with the future land use map, and consistent with the urban form map. The frequent transit area and transit emphasis corridor designation on Wake Forest would suggest a frontage. They have made some concessions to that in their conditions. So a number of consistent policies here really focused on capitalizing on transit, on sustainability, housing variety, just delivering housing in general to our market. The inconsistent policies here flagged around the conservation of existing neighborhood resource, as well as the frontage issue that I already mentioned. So the Historic Development Commission recommends denial. They were interested in retention of the contributing structure, the central portion of the existing structure on site. And then Planning Commission recommends approval. What questions could I answer for you before you open the hearing?
Councilor Patton.
I've always got one. The contributing structure, is it under any sort of preservation, easement, or other kind of protection today?
It's in a National Register district, which offers recognition, but not regulation.
Okay, got it. So the current property owners could tear it down today
Yes, ma'am,
if they
that's
wanted
correct.
to.
Counselor Branch.
Just making sure I'm understanding the conditions as far as height. The back, I'm gonna say the back side away from Wake Forest Road, there towards the community, the single-family homes is 50 feet, and then the front side is 68 feet. Am I reading that correctly?
I'm going to look at the verbatim, because that's not what's in the presentation.
Okay, because I'm just looking at the proposal says 4 stories, but I know they've conditioned this down.
Yep. So for buildings within 50 feet of Mordecai Drive, building height shall be limited to 3 stories.
Stories, which is how many feet?
That'd be 50 feet.
50 feet, okay.
Yeah. So the,
So 50 feet.
let's go back to a picture. So within 50 feet here, right, and that's not to scale.
Right.
Because it's after dark. I don't draw it to scale after dark. But, roughly in this area, that's where the limit on height you would expect to see.
Okay, 50 feet from there, the height is 50 feet.
I'm sorry, 100 feet, within 50 feet of Mordecai,
Take your time. Take a deep
yeah.
breath.
Ooh, getting rough, I apologize. Within 50 feet of Mordecai and Mimosa.
Okay.
So that's going to be along here and here. Yeah.
It's limited to 3 stories, okay.
Any other questions for, do we hazard another question? Just kidding.
Bring it.
We'll give you a break, and we will open the public hearing for Z4025, and we have 5 folks signed up in support: Walker Abbott, Jamie Schwedler, Justin Passfield, Tom Berry, Aaron Sterling, Lewis.
Good evening, Mayor Cowell, members of council. I'm Walker Abbott with Parker Poe at 301 Fayetteville Street, here on behalf of the applicant, Carpenter Development and Elmwood Development. I'm joined by my colleague, Jamie Schwedler, as well as David Meeker and Kate Sharland with the applicant. This is a request to rezone 2 infill parcels at a transition between downtown and the Mordecai neighborhood to add housing and walking distance to transit and neighborhood amenities. Staff covered the parcel overview really well, so I'll just flag that this is currently home to the Brian Lee Funeral Home. You can see that on the Wake Forest parcel to the right, and then its surface parking lot to the left. This process actually started because the owners of the Brian Lee Funeral Home are seeking to retire, and they actually approached Carpenter Development about selling the property to them so that they could redevelop it, and the lease could ultimately retire. The site is currently zoned office mixed use with 3 stories with the Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District, Mordecai 2 district, and that was put in place many years ago, back in the 90s, when to preserve the character of the residential neighborhood when it was predominantly single-family residential. It limits the height to 2 stories and 35 feet. The site is also within the Mordecai Place Historic District. It is a contributing structure to the Mordecai Place District, but because it does not have a standalone historic designation, it could be demolished under the current zoning without any additional historic permitting. While RHDC recommended denial, the discussion only focused on keeping the building or adaptive reuse of the building for apartments. We are offering a salvage and documentation condition, which I'll discuss in more detail later, but we did not receive specific feedback on those. And the only specific feedback we heard was related to the transition to the adjoining properties, which we did address, and I'll discuss more with our conditions later. The Raleigh Comprehensive Plan supports additional density and housing on this site. The future land use map is office and residential mixed use, which is applied to frontage lots along major streets where low-density residential uses are no longer appropriate. The OX is the closest corresponding zoning district, and 4 stories is recommended when near neighborhoods. The urban form has 2 designations. It is a frequent transit area, and Wake Forest Road is a frequent transit corridor. The site is also within 2 small area plans, and both these small area plans and the urban form designations indicate where the city has planned transit and transportation investments and envisions greater density. Our rezoning request is to go to office mixed use 4 stories with conditions and remove the NCOD. OX and 4 stories are both consistent with the future land use map, which recommends 4 stories. It's also consistent with the comprehensive plan, which recommends a 4-story maximum for areas that are considered the edge area, that are those within 150 feet of low to moderate density residential areas, which is exactly what we have here. Carpenter actually met with over 20 neighborhoods, or neighbors, not neighborhoods, over the course of several months prior to filing, and had originally considered filing at 5 stories, which was encouraged by some neighbors and housing advocates, but they made the decision to deliberately file at 4 stories based on feedback from other neighbors. And since then, we have dropped the western side along Mordecai Drive to 3 stories after meetings with neighbors and Planning Commission. And like several other nearby cases, we are requesting to remove the NCOD because it restricts housing products. Our conditions prohibit certain uses in Condition 1. Condition 2 and Condition 3 relate to the documentation and salvage of the historic building. We worked extensively with RHDC staff on having these changes, and some of those changes that were requested by RHDC are shown in, historic staff are shown in underlines there. We also worked with Preservation Raleigh on these. We are prohibiting vinyl siding in Condition 4. That was a direct request from neighbors. And then Condition number 5 adds an urban limited frontage to Wake Forest Road, which we intentionally only added to Wake Forest Road to accommodate requests for a greater transition on Mimosa and Mordecai, which we addressed in Conditions 6 and 7. Condition 6, we are limiting height within 50 feet of Mordecai Drive to 3 stories. You can see that highlighted approximately with GIS in yellow there. And then we increased the setbacks on Mimosa and Mordecai to try to bring the setbacks to be more consistent with the neighborhood character. Under the NCOD today, 15 feet would be required as the primary setback. And then OX, there were options where it could only be a 5-foot setback. So we tried to split the difference and committed to a 10-foot setback. This request is consistent with several policies noted in the staff report on page 11. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan. It's consistent with the future land use map. And Planning Commission voted to recommend approval. This request to add 1 story of height will allow more families to live on a prime infill site within 600 feet of the border of downtown, and it provides greater diversity in housing types in close walking distance to transit, shops, restaurants, neighborhood amenities, and employers. We appreciate your time, and we are happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good evening. Tom Barry. I live at 811 North Bloodworth Street. I'm a professor of architecture at NC State. So I'm a neighbor. The project is just across Wake Forest Road from my home. I fully support this project. Its rezoning request and its request to be removed from the neighborhood conservation overlay district. Carpenter Development is currently building a 19-townhome, 8-studio apartment development right behind my house. During the process, I observed how David Meeker and his team consulted with and meaningfully responded to the community. I had a lot of conversations. Originally, it was proposed as 5 stories, which I fully supported. I would support the project across the street if it were also 5 stories. Here's why. It's a reasonable request. It will be a quality project built by a local company. It will provide compact housing where it's most needed in an inner city neighborhood. It will support the local Person Street businesses and the Wake Forest Road public transit. And it will be part of a future economically and environmentally sustainable Raleigh. I urge council to support this project. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Erin Sterling Lewis. I live at 1229 Cortland Drive in the Mordecai neighborhood. I am an architect, and I'm here to speak in favor of this development. I think it's very thoughtful and really needed in our area. I feel very grateful to live in the neighborhood that I do, and I love the idea of sharing it with others. And as a personal side note, just on the topic of the NCOD overlay, it was actually my time in serving on the Planning Commission years ago that made me start to think that I wish that neighborhood conservation overlay districts had an expiration date or something where they could be revisited every so many years, because changes happen in our city, as you well know, way more often than these to be written in stone kind of deserve to be. So here to speak in favor.
Okay, thank you. All right, we can move to the opposition, and we have 4 folks signed up, although I think Tom Urquhart, right, was not here. So Shay Denning, John Crew, and Matthew Brown.
Hello. Good evening, distinguished members of the Raleigh City Council and Mayor Cowell. It is almost my bedtime, so I'll be brief. I'm Shay Denning. I've lived at 909 Mordecai Drive for more than 20 years. So the applicant is requesting to rezone property that is sitting in the heart of one of Raleigh's oldest neighborhoods. And in fact, this property sits right in front of the Mordecai house. And you all know, because everybody who lives here is required to know, that that is the oldest house in Raleigh still sitting in its first location. So if you grant this request, the thousands of school children who visit the Mordecai House Park every year on their annual field trips, and I do still remember mine, are not going to look out of their front porch of that house on the 1918 house built by the Dortch family. Instead, they will look out and they will look up. And they will look up to a sea of townhomes and maybe apartments permitted to rise to 68 feet on Wake Forest Road, and even under these conditions to 50 feet on Mordecai Drive. Those structures are going to tower over the Mordecai house, and they are going to tower over all of the original homes, including mine, on the 900 block of Mordecai Drive. I implore you not to let that happen. Mordecai is a modern neighborhood that values its historic roots. We have a great variety of homes, some old, some new, some single family, some multifamily, some large, and some small. The Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District that the applicant seeks to remove has allowed that growth. And it's done that while at the same time protecting our neighborhood's historic character. That NCOD, which the city itself has identified as a tool for maintaining and conserving its historic residential neighborhoods, limits buildings to 35 feet and requires 15-foot setbacks. The reason that overlay district exists is to, in the city's words, reduce conflict between new construction and existing development. This rezoning request actually creates that very conflict. And if you grant it, you will declare petitioners the winner, and the losers are going to be the Mordecai neighborhood, our city, and our precious Mordecai Park. Thank you.
Change is inevitable and development can be good, but it's best when it shows an interest in the people already living here above the interest of those who might move here. The vague descriptions of new housing provided in this request do not provide anything unique and will forever alter the historic and cultural landscape of the city of Raleigh. We do need affordable housing. We've got plenty of rapidly built luxury housing already. The preservation community and the Historic Development Commission have all expressed concerns about the implications of the removal of the NCOD protections and the precedent that it sets for further destructive erosion of all such districts and resources. Please support the preservation of our history, our culture, and our city character by denying this request.
Good evening. Thank you for your service, and thank you for letting me speak. The magnificent Dortch Andrews House was built in 1918 for Gavin Dortch, who along with Dan Allen developed the Mordecai neighborhood in the 1920s. It is a masterpiece of Georgian Revival architecture designed by one of Raleigh's greatest architects, James Salter, who also designed the Sir Walter Hotel, the Capitol Apartments, the old agriculture building across from the state capitol, and many important buildings statewide. It is a treasure. It sits across the street from the valuable tourist attraction of the Mordecai House. This developer told us at the neighborhood meeting that denial of this rezoning might make the demolition and redevelopment not financially feasible, such that he would not undertake it. Therefore, if you value Raleigh's architectural heritage, I hope that you will vote to deny. There are hundreds of acres in central Raleigh of useless surface parking, crappy low-rise buildings, and vacant land that nobody cares about that are perfect for development into housing. It is sad, therefore, that this developer has decided instead to destroy our historic architecture. He already tore down 3 historic houses across the street from this. They were nice, affordable rentals. Recently, Mayor Cowell spoke about the soul of Raleigh. Raleigh's historic architecture is part of that soul. Compared to other cities our size, we don't have a whole lot of nice historic architecture. We don't have a lot of soul. We need to keep what we have. This stretch of Wake Forest Road is a beautiful treasure that visitors and residents alike enjoy driving down. We have so many ugly main streets in this town. Those few that retain that beautiful character are so precious to our city. The developer's offer to salvage the house is not of much value because there's nowhere to move it to. However, he could move it to the back of this property and still put a whole lot of units on the property. You all could send this to committee and work out a deal like that. I know this is a long shot. I know I'm up here, I'm going to lose. But I just think it's important that somebody stand up here and speak for the soul of Raleigh. Thank you.
All right, that concludes all the speakers, so I will close the public hearing.
I actually have a question for Matthew and Chris. We received an email stating that if a condition was added to the property, that it would be supported. You spoke, I know, Esther, I see you're here, but I was wondering, because you spoke, would you be in support of a condition that was added that allowed Preservation Raleigh to be part of that salvaging of the home?
I personally do not think that would be acceptable because it's not going to result in the saving of that home.
Okay.
You know, unless it can be moved somewhere on that property, it is just not financially feasible. First of all, you got to have a place to move it in order to move it. So, yeah, you know, that's one of those conditions that sounds nice, but it's really empty.
Okay. Well, I just asked because that was the email that was sent to us
Understood.
today.
I mean, you know, saving pieces of it is better than nothing. Saving it
is what you want.
The goal.
Okay, got you.
Are there other questions?
First of all, thank you all for coming out tonight. I know it's been a long night, so I'm not going to belabor my point or my motion. I move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated April 7th, 2026, contained in the agenda materials, and to approve the zoning amendment with the adoption and effective dates described in the agenda items under recommended action.
Before we vote, I just want to say I appreciate the preservation community and your efforts here. I do think the salvage condition is better
Red,
than.
do we have a second?
Not yet.
I think she's
Okay, okay.
I appreciate your efforts. I think what I'm mindful of is that a denial of this case doesn't necessarily ensure the preservation of the building, and so I think we should redouble our efforts on applying the protections that are needed to these treasures so that we aren't, this case rhymes with the Seaboard Station case to me in the sense that there were no protections in place right now. And so, I'm committed to that, but I do think these salvage conditions are, are in the right spirit for this case. Second.
Okay, any other conversation? All in favor of the motion, aye. All opposed, nay. So that is, okay, so 1. All right. Thanks, everybody. Okay, final case of the night is Z4925 South King Charles Road.
Yep, thank you. Matthew Glenn, Planning and Development. So, excuse me, this is a request to rezone 0.69 acres from residential 4 with the neighborhood conservation overlay district to residential 6 with conditions. Planning Commission recommends approval 9-1. The request is consistent with the future land use map and the 2030 comprehensive plan. So you can see the site here, south of New Bern Avenue on King Charles Road. There's a mix of uses in the area. You can see the golf course to the right. There's low scale, moderate scale residential, commercial, and some industrial uses, and office and institutional. This is a map of the NCOD. You can see it hatched with the little housing symbology. This map also shows the location in green of the transit overlay district that was applied to New Bern Avenue. You can see the site in yellow on the south side of the King Charles Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District. Some images showing what is currently developed on the site. There are 4 zoning conditions. 1 limits future subdivision of the site to no more than 4 total parcels. So it's 1 parcel today. It could be up to 4 under the proposed zoning. Principal dwellings shall be limited to the detached housing type, detached house type. Principal building shall have a minimum setback of 25 feet from the primary street, and maximum building height is limited to 2 stories. So the comparison of existing and proposed zoning, so under existing zoning, 2 units could be delivered. Under proposed zoning, 4 could be delivered. That's limited by the zoning conditions. Front yard setback under the NCOD is 76 feet. The proposed setback under the zoning conditions is 25. Also have a slide here comparing the King Charles NCOD with the proposed zoning. So minimum lot size for the NCOD currently is 33,000 square feet. Under R6, that's 6,000 square feet. 2-story building height is the same. The minimum lot width under the NCOD currently is 144 feet. The request would be the R6 standards of 50 feet. And you can see the rest of the setbacks compared there as well in the final column. Consistent with the future land use map designation of low-scale residential, R6, maximum of 4 units. Consistent policies shown here. Inconsistent with the urban design policy here is related to the removal of the NCOD and is inconsistent with the missing middle housing policy because of the limitation of building types under the proposed zoning. Under R6, townhouses and other building types would be permitted. The principal or the zoning conditions limit development of the property for principal building uses as detached housing type, also dinged for housing variety there. So the Planning Commission recommends approval 9-1, and this is their findings, and the opposed vote is there as well. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Clem? Okay. We can open the public hearing. I have 3 folks signed up in support: Patrick Madigan, Andrew Henry, and Raymond Ryland. You have 8 minutes.
Hi, thank you all. My wife Sarah and I purchased this property about 9 years ago and have lived in it for all that time, except for about a year and a half during COVID. Recent development as we've started to talk about what we could do with the property as we've seen Raleigh grow and change. And so we've been chatting with neighbors, began to have a neighborhood meeting, had some good feedback. We decided to do a conditional application. And then based on the first PC meeting, decided to add 2 more conditions. And so here's our proposal to rezone our primary residence, which is currently 1 home, and to build up to 4 homes, could end up being less once we get to that stage of the process. Here we go. The main feedback we've gotten early in the process was how can you fit 4 homes? Where will people park? What are you going to build? I'll address those up front. And then what if we sold the property after rezoning? That's where we added the conditions to ensure that no matter what happens to our ownership, that the property would be preserved with this intent. And then I think the big one is the fear of setting a precedent of NCOD removal, which I definitely respect and would want to discuss here. So the existing site, I'm not sure why that's rotated, but it is a little over 2/3 of an acre, small home, 3 beds, 1 bath. Here's a potential sketch of what those lot lines could look like if we did go up to the maximum of 4 lots. You can see they're all about 65 to 70 feet wide, 120 feet deep. One of the questions is how in the world can you fit 4 homes where there's currently 1? And so Sarah and I did some research on recent homes of this size on lots of this size to see what it looks like in Raleigh. And this is partially how we came up with the 4 maximum, is that I believe with the frequent transit overlay, or certainly if we went townhomes, a developer who just wants to maximize this would probably be doing 15 or 16 townhomes. And this is really the max at 4 homes of where this kind of squeezes in terms of the yard. This is where we feel comfortable because we do intend to live on this lot. We love our girls going to Inlow. Our youngest is a 2nd grader, so if we stayed there through her time at Inlow, it would be about 10 years. And so as we see homes in Raleigh, this is what we felt comfortable with living in, and also what we felt comfortable giving to the neighborhood, because we respect that there's a lot of feelings about this, that change is really scary, it's really hard, and that even a gentle density increase like this, it feels really disrupting. And so this is a building pattern that's around Raleigh. All these are different neighborhoods inside the Beltline. By no means are these tiny homes. They're not mega mansions. They have sizable yards. Some of them have garages. Some of them have screen porches. And then lastly, just to jump ahead and be brief, you can see our zoning conditions. The last 2 that were added was when Planning Commission wanted to see us do a better job mimicking the NCOD. The NCOD has a 2-story max, so that's just a 1-to-1 copy. The building setback will most likely be further than 25 feet. However, we wanted to offer that because the R10 minimum would be 10 feet, which is R6 minimum would be 10 feet. We have no intention of building that close to the street. After the infill compatibility is applied, we'll see most likely that will bring us further back than that 25-foot minimum. And then when we look at the NCOD removal, this is really the big one. That's naturally out of my control. I can't decide what council does with future rezoning cases. There are a few reasons why I do believe our property is unique. One of them is that the Longview, or the King Charles NCOD, loosely matches with our kind of sister Longview Gardens Historic District. There's a really long PDF document you can look through that lists all the homes that contribute to that character and also the ones that don't contribute. Our property here, along with a few others, are not included in the district itself. So if any of these other NCOD homes wanted to remove in the future, they're going to have an extra layer of difficulty arguing that their home needs to be allowed to leave the NCOD. And when we look at that NCOD, the first 2 restrictions are about the lot size and width. The last 2, if the lot qualifies, are for the structure. And I understand that when an NCOD is created, any sort of homes that are in violation of that, there's no penalties, you're grandfathered in. And yet, when you look at this NCOD, I was surprised that my lot, as it currently stands, is too small. So I actually question for staff. I do know that with R4 zoning, we could technically fit 2 homes, but I don't believe we would be allowed to do a second unit in the NCOD because our lot already is too small. So I'd be interested to know if that's possible, but duplex. Oh, okay, so yeah, if we went multifamily. So when you look at this, out of the 273 parcels that qualify, it's excluding like Inlow High School, I think there's 2 churches, 2 HOA lakes, and some other properties. When you look at the residential parcels, only 7.3% of them meet all 4 of those criteria. So if this were flip-flopped and 93% of homes met all 4 of these criteria, I would totally get what we're preserving. As it stands, if we were to allow up to 3 new lots, the compliance of lots would 59% of lots right now currently don't meet either of those first 2 requirements, and that would increase by about 1%. That's all that I wanted to share, and I'm going to share my time. Oh, and lastly, I wanted to mention there, I know there's been feedback about a lack of traffic study, environmental, stormwater. We're happy to do anything the city requires, and those, for whatever reason, those have not applied to this project, and so something we're happy to do if that's something the city requires at any stage in the process. So, and that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So I guess he's holding that time, or is there someone else who's going to speak? Okay.
Evening, Mayor, Council. I'm Andrew Henry. I live at 2631 Pool Road. I walk my dog past this property every morning, and I'm just here to support the passing of this, I guess, NCOD adjustment. And I think it's a thoughtful, and trust Patrick that he would want to preserve the community. So support it.
Okay, thank you. And then Raymond Ryland, yeah.
Hello, Council. I'm Raymond Ryland. I live at 303 Golf Course Drive, so around the corner from the property in question. I am a member of the COA Committee and Raleigh Historic Development Commission. I'm not here in that capacity. I'm just here as a neighbor, and Patrick has shown me at least most of what you just saw. I feel compelled. I'd like to see even more housing in the area, but I think it's a good project, and I'll be happy to see it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we can move to the opposition, and we have 3 folks signed up: Matthew Butler, Charles Hassel Jr., and Carrie Alcock.
So if one couldn't attend, can we do a swap out? No swapsies?
We generally don't know.
So, yeah, I'm going to speak first. So I just wanted to talk about, the fact that a lot of you are anti-gentrification, and I just want to know what replacing one little house in Southeast Raleigh with 4 or 3 big houses that are way outside of anyone's range to actually buy into is going to help with middle housing crisis or any housing crisis going on. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say, so you can stop the time. I would like to help Charles work the computer so that he can go through his presentation.
Thank you.
Oh, never mind. Can you give me a second to figure out the computer? Thanks.
Just use the arrow key to advance, and I can advance it for you if you need.
Oh, you can? Yeah, if you just do like. Oh, that arrow key. All right, my bad. All right, so he actually wants to start here.
Ready? Good evening, Mayor Cowell and members of the council. My name's Charles Hassel. I've lived in Raleigh since 1968, and in my home at 334 Golf Course Drive for 33 years. I was living there when the NCOD was approved unanimously by this council after lengthy proceedings in 2004 and 2005. I emailed a written statement to all of you last week. I hope you had an opportunity to read it. I just have a few remarks to make. This exhibit shows King Charles and Peel. It's on the corner of King Charles and Peel. All of the lots in the neighborhood with indications no are our neighbors who have filed written statements or have emailed you either at the Planning Commission or before the council opposing. There are more than this. There are now 26 of us, and I sent today an email with a list of the 26 in the neighborhood with the addresses. I'm not very technically capable, so I think I sent 3 copies of it. I apologize for that. But the applicant said before the Planning Commission and filed a document stating that he had personally contacted 16 neighbors who supported his application. We asked him twice to tell us who they were because we couldn't find them, and he refused to do that. There are 26 of us, and that number may grow, and we pay taxes, and we would we would like for our concerns to be considered. More than, yeah, go to the next one. Okay, this is the same exhibit that the applicant put up. I have drawn in also, well, actually, he drew these. As you see, there are going to be two driveway accesses on Peel Place and two on King Charles. King Charles is a high-speed corridor between Newbern Avenue to Pool Road. I've been living there a long time, and I can tell you people drive 55 and 60 miles an hour up and down that all the time. There are going to be two driveways added right there at the corner on King Charles into two lots that he drew. And then there are going to be two more on Peel. Peel, on the other hand, is a narrow street with no sidewalks. And neighbors frequently walk their dogs, their children, baby carriages down Peel to King Charles and around. And I can tell you, I've had many close calls to add 4 houses, probably 2 cars per house, and immediately across Peel, there are new tenants over there, and there are 3 cars that belong to them, is going to create some serious problems. I've almost have been rear-ended trying to turn right onto Peel. I make this trip every day, several times, when somebody's coming up behind me. And there are also cars often now parked on Side Street on Peel. When there are 4 new houses and as many as 11 cars, it's going to be more congested, and it's going to be a real safety hazard. When the NCOD was approved in 2004, there were 329 parcels. The applicant.
Keep going, sorry.
The applicants in that proceeding, which took more than 2 years, were able to get half of the people, up to 165 to 200 people, signed and asked and got the approval of the Planning Commission and the unanimous approval of this council. Some of those people have signed to support what we're doing here. And it seems only fair that if an applicant wants to change or alter the NCOD, that they go through the same process that was required to get it put in place. He wants to do it with by removing it for his one lot, but it's going to affect all of us. He just put them up again. He recently put up these specimen houses that he thought he could build on this lot that he wants to convert into 4 lots. These are the same ones that he put up. What I've added to it are the prices. They're either list or tax assessed in a range from $900,000 to almost $1.4 million. I don't believe that there's anything about what he purports to be able to do here that's going to create any affordable housing. So I wonder about the possibility of, I wonder about the ability for anybody to conclude that there's any sort of public benefit here. It's not going to be adding any affordable housing to Raleigh. Again, I would like the houses in our subdivision, probably 40 or 50 of them that go around the corner from King Charles up Peel and around Golf Course Drive, are all pretty much ranch or split level homes that were built in the 50s and 60s. I've watched people die and new people move in. We have folks ranging in age from 1 month to late 80s. So, and they were well constructed, and they're valued in the $350,000 to $500,000 range. And people buy them all the time. They do, in fact, provide affordable housing as
Oh. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. All right, I will close the hearing. Questions?
Excuse me, I have a question for staff. I'm reading the backup, and it's around transportation. It says, for this street, it says the site lies on the corner of South King Charles and Peel Place, both which are city-maintained roads. South King Charles Road is designed as a neighborhood street in Raleigh, and it mentions street plan, the UDO number. But it says development on the site through subdivision or Tier 3 site plan will require streetscape improvements in the UDO 8.5. Can you speak to, what does that mean?
Yes, so UDO 8.5 is where we have our street cross sections that will show on time from the on the presentations. The neighborhood street, I believe King Charles has already built out to that cross section. It has the sidewalk, curb and gutter. There's also a traffic calming project that's going to come through, install some speed humps and a cycle track on the south side. So I don't think much would be required on South King Charles. Peel Place, however, while it does not have a street designation, the UDO still would require the curb and gutter and the sidewalk along that frontage on Peel Place.
Okay, so that curb and gutter and sidewalk plus 25 feet I'm trying to understand, is that curb and gutter within that 25 feet that is in the zoning case, or is the 25 feet past that sidewalk? Does that make sense?
I'm familiar with the 25 feet you're referring to. Is that a new
Front yard
condition?
setback.
Front yard setback.
The front yard setback.
That is within the public right-of-way, and depending on what the right-of-way is, if they can't fit the curb and gutter and the sidewalk, they would need to dedicate a few feet as public right-of-way.
Okay.
I have a question for staff, I think for planning. Can you tell me about, I think there was a statement from the applicant about how consistent other properties are in the NCOD. Can you speak to those claims?
Yes, I think I was just looking at IMAPs now, and actually if you turn on the parcel layer, and you can turn on the dimensions of each of the lots and see that many of them along Golf Course Drive and South King Charles Road in this section are narrower than the 144 feet that is required by the NCOD. We could do some specific analysis of all of the standards of the NCOD and give you a better idea of which properties are currently consistent with those standards. That would require lot size analysis, lot width analysis, building height, of course, and then front yard setback. But just anecdotally, like looking in this area, there are many that don't appear to be consistent with the standards of the NCOD today.
Thank you.
May I answer your question?
No.
May I answer your question?
No, sir, I'm good.
Sorry.
He answered it. I think so. I have a question as a follow-up to that. If an NCOD was set up today, would it have these large of inconsistencies?
So there's a standard in the code that says at the time that the NCOD is applied, if there are properties that don't meet the standards of the NCOD, that they're not made non-conforming, like illegal non-conformity solely by the application of the NCOD. So In this situation where the NCD is placed and you may have properties that are non-compliant with those standards, if that property was redeveloped, if that building was torn down and something replaced it, anything that went back in its place would need to be compliant with those standards.
So this goes back to, I think, a case we had before, and so I asked this question. If something were to happen to a home and it needed to be replaced, but the lot size is inconsistent with the NCOD, could it be replaced?
Yeah, so again, an NCOD doesn't make it a legal nonconformity, right?
Understand.
And yes, and no lot is nonconforming for the development of a new home in that scenario. So,
But if I want to redevelop it, I have to be conforming.
Correct. And, I think there's more specifics to the example you gave, like how much of the home was demolished or destroyed by an act of God or a fire or something, or if the foundation is still in place. Like, there's a little more like nuance to that question, I believe.
Okay. So I just think this is a case and some other cases that we've had that at some point we have to have the hard conversation, rip the Band-Aid, and talk about NCODs. Just have a conversation. I'm not saying one way or another, but there has to be a conversation about them. So, but that's another day, another time, and another hour.
I think Councilor Silver.
This is so deja vu. I just, at another conversation, we can talk about it, but I'll let you continue, Councilman.
Well, if there's nothing else, this was not an easy case for me just because of the history of this area, the history of this community, the different challenges with missing middle, applications and all those things. But I am ready to make a motion. I move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated April 7th, 2026, contained in the agenda materials, and to approve the zoning amendment with the adoption and effective dates described in the agenda items under recommended action.
Second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Okay, so one against. All right, that concludes the hearing this evening, and we are adjourned.